So my name is Zainab Abouid. I'm 19 years old and I currently study the Bachelor's of Law and International Relations at La Trobe University. I partake in my local community by volunteering with local MPs such as Peter Khalil. I like to also attend and organise events that surround family violence to help ensure that women are heard and young women have voices. I wanted to represent myself as a Muslim woman and represent my community, so I thought why not start at a young age, so when I grow up perhaps I can be in Parliament one day. I feel like I should take advantage of these opportunities and make sure that I advocate on behalf of women, especially in my community that are subjected to family violence.
My name's Leslie. I have been with Moreland Family Daycare as an educator for over 36 years, I think. Family Daycare is a wonderful organisation. We look after children in our own home, they blend in with the family and it's fantastic.
I love Family Daycare.
I can choose my own hours, very flexible. I've made wonderful friendships with lots of the families. I'm now looking after children of the children I used to care for. The children just growing and developing is a wonderful, wonderful experience for me every day. I'd recommend Family Daycare to anybody and everybody. Oh, where's my Scouty snuggle? Where's my Scouty snuggle? Can I have a Scouty snuggle? How's your tea party going?
My name's Hilary. I've been with Moreland Family Daycare for 8 months now and I absolutely love it. The main reason I started with Family Daycare was to be with my little one. Family Daycare is a small environment, so mostly I only have 4 children and it's in a home. Moreland have been really supportive of the whole thing and they helped me find children when I first started. There's so many benefits of working Family Daycare and becoming an educator. Working in your own home, flexible hours, also just watching the other children grow and being such a part of their life. I recommend to educators that want a good life balance if they have their own child. Family Daycare is a great avenue to go down.
Good evening, councillors, members of the gallery, and to our viewers live streaming tonight's meeting. My name is Councillor Dale Martin and I am the chairperson of the Urban Planning Committee. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to tonight's meeting. Our meeting is being held on the traditional country of the Wurundjeri people, and I wish to acknowledge them as traditional owners. I would also like to pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and the elders from our other communities who may be here today. I acknowledge that currently many Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have made Moreland home, and in doing so have contributed to the positive, rich diversity of this municipality. Members of the gallery, please note that this urban planning meeting is being recorded and web streamed live to Council's website and Facebook. This recording will also be available as video on demand. Gallery attendees are advised that they will be recorded during the meeting. Councillors, this is just a reminder that in line with the adopted councillor conduct principles, as outlined in the Councillor Code of Conduct, councillors should ensure that they conduct themselves in this meeting with integrity, partiality, and exercise their responsibilities in the interests of the local community and not improperly seek to confer or advantage any person. This behaviour will support the principles for leadership and good governance that secures public confidence in the office of councillor. So I would like to start tonight by introducing my fellow councillors and the officers that are here in attendance tonight. So first up we have Councillor Natalie Aboot.
Hello.
Councillor Sue Bolton.
Hi.
Councillor Anna-Olivia Carley-Hannon. Councillor Helen Davidson.
Hello.
Councillor John Kavanagh.
Good evening.
Councillor Alia Farnley. Councillor Mark Riley.
Hello.
And Councillor Lambros Tapnos.
Hello.
The officers in attendance tonight are Group Manager of City Development, Philip Priest. Planning Coordinator, Darren Camilleri. Planning Coordinator, Mark Hughes. Planning Coordinator Robert Shatford, Planning Coordinator Narelle Jennings, Unit Manager of Governance Sally Curran, and Governance Officer Saskia Hunter. I would also like to extend a warm welcome to Councillor-elect Jess Dorney, who is with us in the gallery tonight. I would like to start by asking councillors if there are any apologies for tonight's meeting.
I have an apology for Councillor Oscar Yildiz.
Okay, so an apology. Can I have a motion for apology for?
I move that.
Seconded. So moved by Councillor Kavanagh, seconded by Councillor Davidson. We'll vote on that. All those in favour? Have that carried. So moving on to the minutes, can I please have a motion for the adoption of the minutes of the meeting held on the 25th of October 2017? Moved by Councillor Riley, seconded by Councillor Apu. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. Are there any councillors that may have a declaration of interest or conflict of interest for tonight's meeting? No? Okay, thank you. So I would like to start by giving everyone an outline of how the Urban Planning Committee will run this evening. The relevant planner will begin each agenda item by introducing the report and the officer's recommendations. I will then give any objectors the opportunity to move to the lectern to make their submission. After this time, the applicant will be given the opportunity to speak. If you are making a submission, please clearly state your name and address for the record. You are requested to present viewpoints clearly and concisely on why you support or oppose the planning application. Please do not repeat what other speakers have said and keep the discussion focused on relevant issues and points not previously raised. If you are opposed to the planning application, would you please inform the committee why you are opposed and suggest an alternative approach which would satisfy your concerns. Please use this opportunity to focus on your concerns rather than the matters of detail in the officer's report. Please note that there is a limit of 3 minutes for each speaker, but as chairperson, I reserve the right to increase or reduce the time available to any speaker. I ask that all attendees in the gallery please be respectful at all times and give everyone that speaks the opportunity to state their position uninterrupted. We will now move on to commence the presentation of reports, and I'll pass this over to our officers for the first agenda item tonight.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Looks like technology's escaped me, so I'll press on. No, got it. All right, so I'm presenting the item for 18 Albert Street in Brunswick East. This item has 2 recommendations and it's doing 2 discrete bits of considerations. The first is the consideration for seeking approval of a development plan. The second is seeking the approval of a planning application. A little bit of scene setting. So the land is zoned mixed use. It's in a design and development overlay, development plan overlay and parking overlay. You can see the top is where the site is. The next slide will show a bit better. That's it in an aerial view. You may note there's a fairly large parcel of land that's vacant in that image up there. That is the East Brunswick Village, and there's a substantial development proposed there. The development plan affects all the land highlighted in blue, and then the part in orange is part of that larger parcel which is known as the East Brunswick Village. The proposal, the planning proposal seeks the construction of 7 triple-storey dwellings with roof terraces and a reduction in the car parking rate. That's the plan, which shows ground level parking off the laneway, with the exception of the front dwelling, which has no car parking. The first floor contains the kitchen living areas with the balcony onto the laneway, and then the second floor contains the bedrooms, and then there's a roof terrace above. That's the elevation images. Public notice occurred. There was 95 letters sent, and we've got three submitters. The assessment, I first will note that in respect to the car parking assessment, there was no imperial data as part of this application. There was a report supplied by the permit applicant, which undertook access and transport assessment, which is one of the requirements of the development plan. Further, the assessment benefited from a review from Council's traffic engineer, who did not raise any adverse comment. The assessment largely notes that the area has been earmarked for significant change, and that forms a large part of the recommendation to support the proposal. Notably, the report concludes that the development plan complies with the requirements of the development plan overlay. There's an adequate provision of car parking and it's appropriate considering the purpose of the mixed-use zone. The two recommendations begin on page 4 of the agenda, and if there's no other questions, I'll leave it there.
Okay, thank you. So are there any objectors here tonight that wish to speak to this item? So I'll get you to come up first, thank you. If you could please state your name and your address as well, thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Wenyuan Liu. I'm a resident at 153 Nicholson Street, which is 2 dwellings immediately to the south of this development. So to summarize my issues with this development is that firstly is the visual bulk impact of this development on our property, on our private open space, and secondly the shadowing effect of this development, which consists of an 11-meter wall on our northern boundary of our private open space. And our private open space is very small, only 4.5 by 5 meters. And the second, or the third point I'm making is the overlooking and privacy issue, which I'll go through each point one by one. So firstly, the shadowing effect. So in the planning report, it is acknowledged that the shadowing effect on our courtyard by the officer. However, there were 2 reasons that were used to justify the shadowing effect. One is that we have 2 private open spaces and the affected one being the larger of the 2. That is not true. I'd like to show the officers the council endorsed plan of our 2 dwellings on this lot, and the affected courtyard, which is this one here, is the larger one of the 2. This one is 22 square meters, where we have a very small courtyard of 18 square meters. I'd like to pass this one, this plan, original plan, as well as copies of it around. Secondly, another justification that was used is that the affected area is also used as a car space. This is only partially true because as we're moving towards higher density living, moving away from traditional lifestyle of using cars, we are using more and more bicycles and greener living and public transport, especially in view of the access to Nicholson Street tram. We feel that the planning department is assuming that we're going to use that space as a car space as opposed to the yard. As you can see in the pictures I have here of the courtyard we're currently using it to grow tomatoes. So I'd like to pass that around.
Okay.
So that's with respect to the shadowing effect. I would like you to imagine the 11-meter wall on boundary and that shadowing effect on our courtyard. Secondly is the visual bulk impact. In the planner's report, the visual bulk effect of an 11-meter wall on boundary was not addressed. I'd just like to ask the committee members to imagine themselves living in using a courtyard that's facing an 11-meter wall. Our kids are going to play in that space, and the sense of imprisonment it creates for us in our everyday living. We can see that the developer has provided a setback from the eastern boundary that is 1 meter at first floor, 1.5 meter at the second floor, and 2.8 meters at the rooftop level to reduce the visual bulk and the shadowing effect on the neighboring properties along the eastern boundary along Nicholson Street. However, it's on the southern boundary, the poor neighbors at 153 Nicholson Street, we have an 11-meter wall without setbacks right on the boundary. We felt that a similar setback, or at least a compromise, need to happen to reduce the impact on our everyday life and our quality of life. The planning officer's recommendation in the report was that for the staircase access to the roof terrace from dwelling 7 to be replaced by access latch to reduce the overall height on that boundary, which is affecting us. However, a reduction of 11 meter from 11 meter to 10 meters is not going to reduce the shadowing effect or the visual bulk impact on our courtyard.
Sorry, Ms. Liu, if I could just get you to summarise.
Yep. So the second issue is the privacy and overshadowing. The current plan as submitted to council does not even include our private open space as private open space. It's not correctly drawn on the plan. So with the overlooking issue is not assessed to looking to our courtyard. I'd like to invite the councillors to look at the page 42 of the report. And if we're removing the rooftop access to the rooftop terrace, the stairwell, that means the screening on the rooftop is only 1 meter. So therefore, the resident from the neighboring property can directly look into our property 11 meters down and see straight into our yard. And this is, I've just highlighted where the position of our courtyard and the access stairwell here.
Okay, thank you very much.
So it's the visual bulk impact, the shadowing effect, and the privacy issues I have a problem with. Yeah.
Thank you. Can I please have the next objector?
Good evening. My name is Vicky McLaughlin and I'm owner-occupier of apartment 5, number 20 Albert Street. I'm the only owner-occupier in that block. Everyone else is rented out, and I suspect that's what will happen with most of the people in number 18 too. My opposition is to the reduction in 7 car parking spaces for that very reason. Although we're near public transport, if there's renters, there's usually groups and there's usually more than 1 car. I know from anecdotal evidence that at number 20 there are at least 3 cars per 7 units in our block. So not, and we only have 1 garage because they were done years ago. So I think this is going to get worse. I think with the East Brunswick Village and the other development, there's already parking problems there. We're having to park if we get home late, 10 o'clock last night, I had to go down a side street and search for a car park to park my car. There's always congestion around there. So I understand the need for growth and change. I'm in business myself, but if we look at, as you see, one of your values is about the interests of the local community, I feel that this is cramming too much into a space that it can't take. So I think that needs to be reviewed, and my alternative approach is it needs to be redesigned with further car parks. Although the developer may have had a study done and the traffic engineer may have said that looked okay, I am questioning why there wasn't an independent study done, given the amount of development around Nicholson Street, where there's clearways, so there's going to be more apartments on Nicholson Street looking for parking on Albert when they're all going up. And so I am looking for consideration to do that independent study, get some results and see if this is sustainable, because I don't think it is. I don't think it's sustainable from a health and safety perspective, and from a congestion perspective it's ending up like the back streets of Richmond around there. And if any of you live there or have driven through Albert Street any time of the day or night, you will know how congested it is around there. So that's the consideration that I'm asking for, is that we do give community and the people who live there equal hearing as around people that are developers. And I know the person said they're developing to live there, but they may not be there forever. And there's 7 apartments there, and they will have renters and there will be cars. The number 96 tram has not stopped that. We still all use cars. That may stop in 10, 15 years, but not at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there other objectors that wish to speak? Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Antonio Colonna. I'm partly owner of unit number 3, number 1, McCall Court, Brunswick West. My mum actually lives there in their apartment, and we own it with my brother and my sister. Now, apparently the unit underneath wants to build an extension on this onto his property.
Sorry, sir. Which application?
Unit number 2. 1 McCall Court. And we're on number 3.
No, this is
Yeah.
different.
So this is for 18 Albert Street. So yeah, if you just wait in the gallery, we can chat about that in a little while.
I thought it was upcoming later.
No.
So you want me to come back?
Yeah, we'll call you.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Stick around though.
Yes.
Because I'll get voted on tonight.
Yes. Are there any other objectors for 18 Albert Street in the audience? No? Okay. Can I ask, is there the proponent in the audience would like to speak at all?
My name's Chris McGowan. I'm the architect of the project. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. As you would know, we had a 22-month process going through council with this application, and we had pre-application meetings. All the setbacks, even in the parking, came out of those discussions with council's own officers. I spoke with Robert, actually, I don't know if you remember, but it would have been dozens of times trying to kind of navigate this development plan for this proposed townhouse. And out of that process came several concessions that we made. So as I said, all of the setbacks were basically kind of prescribed to us. They said, this is, look, we want townhouses on this site. We said, great. We want this height. We said, great. Wouldn't it be great to have roof decks? Great. Even the front unit that doesn't have car parking, that was a result of council's own preference to not have essentially a blank wall to the street. They wanted windows, they wanted space, and we were happy to comply with that as well. We've had 2 public notification processes on this one, and I know it's always difficult kind of balancing the needs of current residents and future residents. But out of that, the reduction of the rear wall height, which was brought up earlier, was actually a condition that we asked council to impose. It wasn't something that council imposed, so it was a concession being made. One thing I'd like to pass around is just a shadow diagram of Miss Lou's rear yard. The proposed plans, which came to light after we submitted, and in that 22 months got approved, are basically the courtyard's designed to face south. And so even though where our building would be casting shadows on it, by the time our building is casting shadows onto that courtyard, the proposed 3.8 meter wall to the north of that courtyard overshadows that entire space without us doing anything. And that's what those shadow diagrams there will show you. With regards to the rear courtyard, obviously there's 2 dwellings being proposed there. That would have been proposed to council with rear car parking. That courtyard is actually, in terms of the planning process, used for car parking. And there was additional concessions given to the neighbor to the, I guess it was to the east. So not only are we giving them timber screening, but we're also frosting the windows on the first floor as a response to that consultation process, which was done through council. So I guess that's where we stand. It's been a long process. We think it's a really nice project. I think there's high amenity. As someone who lives in a 3-story townhouse myself, and a family of 4 with 1 car, it's exactly the type of place that I would want to live in. So we thank you for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McGowan. Okay, so I'll ask my fellow councillors if anyone has a motion that they would like to move. Councillor Riley.
I'd like to propose an amended alternative motion, rather, as circulated to members of the planning committee. So it is, in essence, it's the motion that has been distributed to the public with 2 key changes, and they do affect the 7th property on the side with the overshadowing that's just been discussed by some of the objectors and the architect for the proponent. So I just would read these out.
Yeah, so read them out and then I'll get a second.
I won't read the whole motion because I'll take them as read, but the sections that I'll read for the Part A, the new clause C, which is in addition to clause A and B on the original, the southern part of the building approximately, in brackets, approximately the final 5.4 metres being 2 stories in height only, with any roof terrace at this location being accessed from a pop-up hatch only. In brackets, that is not a covered staircase, full stop. And then in Part B, to add an additional or above a new A clause, which then renumbers the others B through to L. So the new A would read dwelling 7 being double storey with no on-site car parking and no changes to other boundary setbacks in conjunction to any changes required by condition 1D. So,
okay, so do we have a seconder for Councillor Riley's motion? Councillor Bolton.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. So thank you for those submissions. This is a mixed-use zone, and it's part of the broader or larger, what's known as the East Brunswick Village site, and there had to be two processes in this in terms of allowing a planning development to occur as well as the application. So it's been quite involved. I appreciate that. I also appreciate the work that the proponents have gone into listening to the community adjoining and around that area and coming to many compromises to deal with this. And I know that you've tried to reduce the rooftop from 11 to 9.6. I'm not sure that 1.4 quite cuts it for me. You were able to do this on the front of the building, and I suspect we can do this on the rear of the building too and still have 5 units with car parking. It will mean a reduction in 1 car park as a result. But I think given many of the policies of this council to try and introduce sustainable travel and transport options, I think, and the increase in bike usage in our city, as the most recent survey of our users, we're one of the highest users of bikes in the country. Some of our policies are working in this regard. I know they're not all perfect yet, but we are working with that in mind. So I think I accept the arguments around the visual impact and the fact that car space open rear yard has been designated as a car space open space. And I think Wei Lin elegantly described the fact that they're intending not to use it for that in the future and actually to use alternative forms of transport. So with that in mind, I'm encouraging us to consider this proposal as a way forward to essentially accept all of the good work that's been done with this condition, and hopefully we can have an acceptable outcome to the proponents as well as to the community and the adjoining neighbours. I think you've done a lot of work and a lot of great design issues with the cladding around the screening and a whole lot of other issues that you've dealt with there. So I'll leave it at that. And
thank you, Councillor Riley. Are there any other councillors that wish to speak to the amendment? Councillor Kavanagh.
I'm going to speak against only because I'm comfortable with the officer recommendation. I realise the impact of the near neighbour, but I do think it makes that last unit a little bit problematic without the car space. So I also think I'm understanding that we do have to move A and then move B, or can we move them both at once? Can I check with the officer?
Yeah, if the council moved them part A and then part B as they set in the agenda, that's
okay. So can I request that they're separated into part A and B only for that reason, so that we're approving the 18 Albert Street development plan first and then the actual application? That's my request.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. Councillor Abood.
Yes, I'm just rising to support the amendment, the extra conditions. I think that it's very important not to lose the big picture of what this development's actually trying to do. And so I just wanted to commend some of the ESD of this application, because I noticed that you're using water tank, water court, harvested water to flush toilets, and that the neighbours' rating is 6.6 stars, which is quite high. And I think that considering what we'd really like to see happen in this city in terms of development, although it is having an impact on the neighbours, which is inevitable with most of the developments we see, and we're trying to address that here, I think it's really important to commend the ESD of the development, because I just hope that we see more of this sort of thing coming through this place. The other thing is that I wanted to address is that, yes, we're losing a car space from the bottom floor, but we're also potentially losing a bedroom from the bottom floor, because in the construction drawings, all of those bottom apartments had double beds in the drawings. And I know that the architect drawing shows that they're not bedrooms, but I don't think that the parking is necessarily going to be so much of an issue by losing that extra car space. And I'm hoping that people are not using cars, or only a limited number of people using cars in this new development. So I'm happy to support Councillor Riley's proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Abood. Are there any other councillors that wish to? Councillor Tapanos.
I'll rise to speak against the proposal and in favour of the officer's recommendation. It's always difficult. Planning is always difficult, particularly in Brunswick, particularly in this part of Brunswick where we have such great densities. But we do need to pay attention to design and what this area would look like in the future. And when you have a look at what is being proposed to the south, you are seeing a significant change of up to 5 stories on those boundary walls. So you need to appreciate that this area would look very different in the future. Now, I'm very sympathetic to the residents who are abutting this property and their open space in particular. However, the diagrams that are presented do indicate that there would be no additional shadowing because that wall and that space is already shadowed with even 2 stories, which is what is proposed at the moment. I am also concerned in regards to what this apartment would look like, because we shouldn't be making decisions just for existing residents, but also our future residents. So we've already heard about car parking being a concern, so this will result in 1 less car parking spot. We know overshadowing is a concern, but I guess what we don't have here is what would be the overshadowing on the rooftop garden of that last apartment when all of the other, when it's scaled down. Would it mean that that entire rooftop garden is overshadowed? So I think that these are very valid concerns. I think the development would look very awkward if it scales down like that and one's been chopped off effectively. I think there is great design, if I may say so. It kind of replicates what is on the other side of the laneway, but it does so a lot better and with a lot better design. So I think when you look at it from a neighbourhood character, it would say that it does fit the future character of the area. I think that you would see that it's got great design, and even though we're very sympathetic to the resident, would love to be able to cut it down a little bit, there would only be hardly any impact at all as far as overshadowing, because it's already overshadowed. But what you are creating is a more difficult environment for those future residents with their open space on the rooftop being overshadowed and them having 1 less car park. So taking all that into consideration, I think it's probably worth supporting the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Tapanos. Councillor Bolton.
I'd like to speak in favour of the amendment, or the amended motion proposed by Councillor Riley. I feel that this is a classic case where 2 sets of plans were going through council at the same time. I'm not sure if neither one was aware of the other, but that's what seems to have happened. I feel very strongly for the resident who with the backyard, who's going to be very, very boxed in. I can certainly conceptualise that situation myself. And I feel as if, yes, certainly the developer has attempted to ameliorate certain situations for certain residents, and I can certainly understand that. But I feel that I can put myself in the shoes of the resident and with the little courtyard. I mean, I just feel it's quite a small courtyard. If it was a much bigger garden, I think maybe I'd be happy to vote in favour of this proposal, but I certainly support this amended resolution on the basis of trying to protect or give extra protection to the resident whose courtyard is going to be very boxed in.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. And I should also say, Councillor Bolton, feel free to speak from the chair if you need to. Do I have any other councillors that wish to talk to this item? No? Okay. Councillor Riley?
Yeah, just in closing, just to remark that the East Brunswick Village development is going to be the largest development that we're experiencing in our city at the moment. It's going to produce hundreds and hundreds of apartments to the south of this. And I think that in amongst all of that construction, trying to maintain a little bit of garden and open space, I think, is worth attempting for us to do in this case. And we should be trying to encourage that kind of amenity for people, because we know how important greenery is and for people's mental and general health. So I just want to close with that in mind, to keep that in mind when making the decisions.
Thank you, Councillor Riley. So I will put Part A of Councillor Riley's alternative motion to the vote. All those in favour? This is for Part A.
That includes,
so this includes the Councillor Riley's amendment. Okay, so I think that was that clear. We'll just do that again. So this is Part A of Councillor Riley's amended motion. So I'll put that.
Could we get that amendment on the screen? So
is it the application or the amendment?
It includes. Yeah.
It includes Part C.
The amended motion.
Yes. So councillors, just to note, there is amendments to both Part A and Part B. So again, I'll put Councillor Riley's amended Part A to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? So that Part A is lost. Councillor Riley has asked for that to be noted. So call for a division. Okay, so we'll have that again. All those in favour of Councillor Riley's Part A? And all those against? Okay, thank you, councillors.
I might now move the officer recommendation for Part A, which is basically what was put up before without Section C.
Yep.
In favour, seconder. Yeah.
So we're moving to Councillor Riley, Councillor Kavanagh.
I actually moved both of them in the first instance, and given that they're both linked, I think logically, John, through the chair, it would make sense to decide on both, because I can see what's going to happen. You're almost foreshadowing that the other motion is
okay.
Which we know, I think we can see, we can read what's happening, but maybe make more sense to deal with it in.
Yeah, thank you, councillors. So I hear those comments, and we'll put Part B, Councillor Riley's alternative motion for Part B to the vote, and then if it's unsuccessful, we'll foreshadow it with the officer's recommendation. So councillors, all those in favour of Councillor Riley's amended Part B? Thank you. And all those against? Okay, I declare that lost.
We have a division on that.
And we've called for another division on that one. So again, all those councillors in favour? And all those against? Okay, thank you, councillors. So what we'll do now is, Councillor Kavanagh?
Could I move Part A of the officer recommendation on page 4 of the council report, please?
Thank you.
I'll second
that. So moved by Councillor Kavanagh, seconded by Councillor Farnley. Is there any debate from councillors? No? Okay, in that case, I will put Part A of the officer recommendation to the vote. All those in favour? Okay, so I consider that. And all those against? Thank you. So that's declared one.
May I move Part B of the officer recommendation on pages 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 of the agenda, please.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. So I'll seconded by Councillor Farnley as well. So I'd like to put that to the vote. All those in favour of Part B? And those against? Okay, declare that one. Thank you, councillors. I'll now pass back to the officers for next steps.
Thank you, Councillor. So the committee has resolved in Part A to approve the development plan for 18 Albert Street, Brunswick East, and also resolved in Part B to issue a planning permit for the construction of 7 triple-storey dwellings. That decision will be notified to the permit applicant and all objectors. It's important to note that objectors do not have third-party appeal rights to VCAT in this situation. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we'll move on to the second agenda item for tonight, and that is 39 Melville Road, Brunswick West, and that is MPS 2017-829. Pass it over to the officers to kick us off.
Yeah.
Microphone right to the end. I think it's the other side.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you, councillors, and good evening, members of the gallery. The second item for this evening is an application at number 39 Melville Road in Brunswick West. It involves the construction of a 5-storey building comprising of 12 dwellings. Use of the land as a vet clinic and associated animal boarding. So the subject site is visible in the top left-hand corner. Adjacent to the site is Estonia House, a heritage listed building, and the photo in the bottom corner is a view down the laneway. That tall brick building, 12-metre high wall, is part of Estonia House. Part of the application involved notice to neighbours and nearby landowners and occupiers. As a result of that process, 25 objections were received, and council officers held a consultation meeting on the 24th of August. There were quite a few issues that came up, but probably some of the key themes: car parking, overlooking and overshadowing, and just neighbourhood character in general. As proposed, so the advertised proposal is illustrated on the screen, 3D elevations. So 4-storey element to Melville Road. To the back, it actually stands at 5 storeys in height. And that's because of the slope of the land towards Moonee Valley. So taking you through the plans quickly, so obviously you'll see car parking is via a car stacker accessed off the right of way. Going up to what is ground level at Melville Road is a commercial tenancy, about 220 square metres. There's an accessible apartment to the rear of that, fronting onto the laneway. We then go up levels, so 4 dwellings on first and second floor, and as proposed, 3 dwellings on the third floor. Now, part of following the consultation meeting, the applicant came back and resolved to delete dwelling 3.1, so essentially creating that into a communal outdoor area. So that reduces the building height at the rear of the site from 5 storeys down to 4 storeys. There's a condition contained in the recommendation by the officer that would ask for that dwelling to be deleted. Again, the elevation plans as advertised, and then as proposed, the area hatched represents that section which has been deleted. There was also some minor changes that the applicant instigated to the facade, and that was on advice of council's urban designers. So just changes to the treatments. And councillors, the recommendation by the officer is that a notice of decision for a planning permit be issued, including that deletion of dwelling 3.1, which, as I said, takes it down to 4 storeys at the back, and modifications to the facade treatment. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there members here in the gallery that would like to state their objection to this? Please come forward to the lectern.
Liz Sharman. I'm in Albert Street, quite close to the proposed development. I originally went to the state planning panel with my concern was that lack of buffers between heritage overlay and the new proposed neighbourhood activity centres, and this is one where this is one area where the proposed development is just over the lane from a Heritage Street or down Hunter Street and Victoria Street. I'm also here speaking because people at number 60 and 58 Hunter Street are musicians, and you cannot not turn up when you've got an orchestra performance. I'm aware that Andrea Taylor was in touch with council members tonight or yesterday with an email about her concerns. And her concerns, even following Robert's work with the proponent to change that additional story, are still noise. The car stacker has a perforated metal gate in the basement and not a lot of soundproofing qualities. It's 100% impermeable development, so it's fairly resonant. So that remains one of her concerns, plus losing the apartment on the original fifth floor good. A bit of a concern about whether the new community gathering area becomes party central. That's a possibility. My own concern was one that Robert said, that's a Vic Roads matter. My concern is that Melville Road is a rat run. It's become a rat run since the freeway came in. It's 4 Ks at 60 Ks an hour. Now, I understand that council may not be able to do much about this, but what you could consider is that if there had been 14 accidents involving hospitalisation or deaths on the corner of Victoria Street and Melville in the time since the Vic crash stats have been collected, and I'm starting to look at those stats because I know that's going to help concerns that we have with potential overdevelopment along Melville Road. The only corners that are worse are Reynard and Moreland. So you've got Hope Street, Victoria Street, Albion Street, all on about 14 in the same period of time. And when you think about it, this area of Victoria and Melville didn't even ever pass echelon planning's criteria to be a neighbourhood activity centre. I'm going to just leave you with the stats, if I could, for crashes along Melville Road, because I think if you don't provide parking, this is particular business where parents are going to turn up with a sick pet, they're going to shove the kids in the car, they're going to get out of the car if they park near this proposed development, right where the tram stops, where cars squeeze through, and potentially where, if you talk to Con on the corner, in the fish shop on the corner of Victoria Street and Melville Road, you'll get a very colourful and interesting explanation of the near misses, let alone the deaths. So I'll leave that with you, and I do hope the council can consider that parking issue.
Thank you, Liz. Are there any other objectors in the gallery that wish to come forward? Okay. Is it the proponent or a representative of the proponent here?
Thank you, Chair, councillors and officers. My name's Andrew Gray. I'm a town planning consultant from ARG Planning. I'm representing the applicant. Firstly, I'd say that this site is a very well located site for this sort of proposal. It's within the Neighbourhood Activity Centre. It's a commercial 1 zone. It's located on a main road with a tram line. In the council's own work in C159, the Neighbourhood Centres amendment, it's identified as a focus area for change for development up to 4 stories. So it has very strong strategic support within the planning scheme. The proposal before you, I say, is a true mixed-use proposal. One of the owners of the land is a vet, and they wish to open a vet clinic on the site, which we say is good for employment and also to provide a service to local people who may have pets nearby. This application was lodged in December 2016, and so there's almost been a year of work between ourselves and the council officers, and we thank them for their assistance. And through that period and through that work, we've addressed matters that have arisen of concern, including compliance with the proposed DDO under C159. We've worked in relation to Council's Heritage Advisor and the interface with the Estonian Club building, which is an individually significant building. We've got acoustic reports to deal with noise issues arising from the use of that premises and also from the main road. We've looked at changes to the upper level to reduce the impact on the adjoining properties in terms of overshadowing and visual impact. We ensured the layout and design of the apartments provides good internal amenity, meets council's apartment design code, and we've done work with the ESD officers to include initiatives such as a 10,000 litre water tank for toilet flushing and a whole range of other matters. So, as you'll see in the officers' report, all those internal council departments are satisfied with the proposal. In terms of off-site impacts, as I said, the overshadowing to the rear will occur early in the morning, but it is within Res Code standards. The council officers have addressed matters of overlooking and other issues as part of conditions and also on the plans. The parking provision is full parking for the residents of the proposal. There's 3 spaces provided for the vet clinic. The vet clinic has a cap of 4 staff, so it's almost 1 space per staff member. So the proposal is almost self-sufficient for car parking. There's also bicycle parking provided. So we say the application is a compliant application. We say that there's been a lot of work, and again, we thank the officers. We thank them for the recommendation, and we seek the council's support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gray. Councillors, can I have a motion for this agenda item?
Question.
Yes, Councillor Bolton.
Just for the applicant, so where are the visitors meant to park? The sick pets?
There's a parking overlay on this site that waives the requirements for visitor parking. I think the officers might talk about that. It's in the officer report.
I thought that veterinary business would
I see, sorry.
require
Okay, sorry.
more car parking.
No, sorry. Look, I thought you were referring to visitors to the residential properties.
So I think Councillor Bolton's question is parking related to the business operations. Yes. Am I correct in saying that, Councillor Bolton?
It's for people visiting the vet with sick pets. They're likely to want to park somewhere to take their pet to the vet.
Look, sorry about that. I thought you were referring to visitors to the residential property.
Because the visitor parking I can see
Yes.
is about staff parking.
Yes, that's right. The traffic report that was done, and also the council traffic engineer's assessment, was that that visitors to the vet would either potentially come by foot, or if they were to come by car, they would park on the street. It's probably not convenient. It wouldn't be convenient for visitors to the vet clinic to park in a basement where there was stackers. It's probably not a suitable arrangement.
And is it only for cats, or...?
The cattery? Yes, it's only a cattery. Yeah,
so no other animals would visit the vet?
No. It's so what it is, there's 2 uses being sought. One is for a vet practice, which would treat dogs and guinea pigs and birds or whatever it might be. But the boarding is only relating to cats, up to 20 cats, councillor.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bolton. Councillor Riley, I believe you have a question.
It's just a question through the chair, and you may be able to answer it, Mr. Gray, but I'm not sure. But I think it's more of an officer's comment, so stay there.
Yes.
But in terms of the buffer Liz mentioned a buffer for heritage. Is there such a thing or a notion in planning, or is that something that was considered or not?
Yeah, through the chair, there's certainly a design issue of how the building relates to any neighbouring heritage building. It's a consideration of design. There aren't set buffers in the planning scheme for heritage interfaces.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other Councillor Avud?
Yes, I've just got a question about the breakdown of the apartments. I've noticed that there are 11 2-bedroom apartments and no 3-bedroom apartments at all. And I've read that the idea is it caters to a diverse mix of housing in the neighbourhood. And my concern is that currently I think you could probably safely say that the type of people that are living in that neighbourhood are living in bigger houses, and they're probably families, and sure there might be a big share house full of people renting something cheap that's going to get knocked down and developed. But my concern is just that we have such a humongous number of 2-bedroom apartments literally just down and around the corner, and I just wondered what the justification is for not building the kind of apartments that could house more than just 1 or 2 people on this development?
Yes, look, you're right. I mean, all the apartments are 2 bedrooms. There is a mix to some extent because on the ground floor there is an accessible apartment which is specifically designed for someone with a disability. The other apartments, as you go up the building, are all 2 bedrooms, but they are of a different size in terms of the area and the layout. There would be a variation in terms of the price point for those apartments. But you are right, Councillor, they are all 2 bedrooms. One of the things about the apartment code that Council has in terms of the requirements for the large light wells, the idea that you have outlook to the front and back, it does actually, when you work through the design with the architects, it actually does restrict in some ways what you can get into it. It does reduce the floor space that you can get. And so the idea of having larger 3-bedroom apartments is a little bit more difficult on some sites because you're required to have outlook to the front and back. You're required to have a minimum of 9 square metre light courts through the site. And so you are a bit squeezed in what you do. But look, we say that, that this does create a diversity of housing within the wider neighbourhood. Obviously, as you say, to the rear in Brunswick West, there are a lot of larger dwellings, and it does create that diversity in that way. So, I hope that answers your question. It probably doesn't fully, but
Sorry, I had another question as well. Sorry. So yes, I did also notice the design and the amazing views that would be out over the Moonee Valley, and that also made me realise the incredible westerly sun beaming into the faces of those rear-facing faces of those apartments in the afternoons. And I didn't notice if there was any solar panels or anything on the apartments, and I just wanted to ask a question about whether there's any kind of provision for cooling those apartments and whether you would be expecting to be using reverse cycle air conditioners, or what the plan is with that kind of scenario in terms of how hot those apartments are going to get in the afternoons, and what provision there is to cool them.
Just one second. The ESD report, there's a couple of things about that. The ESD conditions on the officer's report does require greater details or more work to be done on the north, east and west glazing in terms of dealing with that heat load. And they require a minimum 6.5 nat-hers and cooling loads not exceeding 30 megajoules per square metre. So there's a performance-based condition in the recommendation that we need to address to demonstrate that. But look, there would be refrigerated reverse cycle air conditioning in these proposals. I mean, it is in apartment developments, it is difficult to not have that, to allow people to have a cool apartment on a hot day like today, for example. But certainly, the ESD officers in relation to the material that's been lodged were generally satisfied, subject to some additional requirements that have been included in the conditions, and we're happy with those conditions, and we're happy to improve and update some of the ESD initiatives to address that. But yeah, so that's, I suppose, the response, if that's acceptable.
I'd just like to call for a short adjournment. There's quite a few elements of this proposal that I find quite concerning, and I just want to work through some of those points.
Thank you, Councillor Davidson. Are there any other questions for the proponent? I would like to move from the chair that we have a short 5-minute adjournment.
I think you can do that without any
Yeah. So apologies for those in the gallery and those watching at home. We'll be back very shortly. Thank you.
My name's Leslie. I have been with Moreland Family Daycare as an educator for over 36 years, I think. Family Daycare is a wonderful organisation. We look after children in our own home, they blend in with the family, and it's fantastic.
I love Family Daycare.
I can choose my own hours, very flexible. I've made wonderful friendships with lots of the families. I'm now looking after children of the children I used to care for. The children just growing and developing is a wonderful, wonderful experience for me every day. I'd recommend Family Daycare to anybody and everybody. Oh, where's my Scouty snuggle? Where's my Scouty snuggle? Can I have a Scouty snuggle? How's your tea party going?
My name's Hilary. I've been with Moreland Family Daycare for 8 months now and I absolutely love it. The main reason I started with family daycare was to be with my little one. Family daycare is a small environment, so mostly I only have 4 children and it's in a home. Moreland have been really supportive of the whole thing and they helped me find children when I first started. There's so many benefits of working family daycare and becoming an educator. Working in your own home, flexible hours, also just watching the other children grow and being such a part of their life. I recommend to educators that want a good life balance if they have their own child. Family daycare is a great avenue to go down.
Hey Moreland, today I'm down in St Kilda for the Midsummer Pride March supporting the LGBTQ community. It's a beautiful day. I'm proud to be here representing Moreland, walking behind so many wonderful dedicated people. This march goes towards exactly what our values are. At Moreland, we're one community proudly diverse.
More pride! More pride! More pride! More pride! More pride! More pride!
I'm Moana Hope, most people call me Mo. I've grown up playing at Glenroy Football Club and now I play for Collingwood Football Club. I grew up in Glenroy, born and bred. My first year ever I played at Hatfield. From the second year all the way up to under 12s, it's Glenroy Football Club. I'm one of 14 and the reason why I got into it was my dad and my brothers. I used to watch all their games from the age of 3. It was community football, so it was the best type of football.
So proud.
Local footy is really important. I think, especially Glenmoree being a suburb and this being the main supplier of sports for the community. You look at what Glenmoree are trying to do here, trying to bring up a women's team, and in the background is my niece who just finished under 12. So at the moment she hasn't got a pathway. So Melanie's played for Glenmoree from the same age as me, from the age of 7, and she is now too old to play boys football. So she's excited about the girls team, aren't you? Very. So she's extremely competitive, not as good as me. Calm down. Probably a few kids are not on the right road, and I think if you give them that sport or that outlet to go and meet new people, it can benefit the community in more ways than one. What do I say to girls? It doesn't matter who you are, what your skill level you are, what fitness level you are. It's a good environment to be in, it's fun, you meet new mates. This is where you want to be, so come down and have a kick.
So I'm Claire Johnston and I'm an accredited cricket bat maker and the first female in the world. I learnt how to make cricket bats from Ian Cullen. There's a lot of bats out there for men and I felt that there was an opportunity there to actually work with women to make better bats and to actually make them for their style. So recently I was commissioned to make 5 cricket bats for the Pascoe Vale Headfield Cricket Club for their under-13s girls cricket team. And to see their faces when they were given the cricket bats was just brilliant. So what I'd really love to be able to do is to keep working with my local community, the local cricket clubs, particularly the women, and work to make great cricket bats.
My name is Michael Tortoni. I'm the founder of Melbourne's legendary jazz club, Bennett's Lane. I've recently moved to the very, very cool Brunswick. The Jazz Lab here on Leslie Street, Brunswick is Melbourne's new home of jazz. In my old club, you might have seen Prince for a late night set, or the Wynton Marsalis Band, or even the Harry Connick Jr. Trio. My new club will also host stars of contemporary music, starting with the Bill Frisell Trio for the Melbourne International Jazz Festival, as well as local stars. So drop in for some great music and a drink at the Jazz Lab.
So my name is Zainab Abouid. I'm 19 years old and I currently study the Bachelor's of Law and International Relations at La Trobe University. I partake in my local community by volunteering with local MPs such as Peter Khalil. I like to also attend and organise events that surround family violence to help ensure that women are heard and young women have voices. I wanted to represent myself as a Muslim woman and represent my community, so I thought why not start at a young age, so when I grow up perhaps I can be in Parliament one day. I feel like I should take advantage of these opportunities and make sure that I advocate on behalf of women, especially in my community that are subjected to family violence.
Okay, thank you everyone. Thank you for bearing with us while we had that short adjournment. Apologise for those in the gallery and those watching at home. So we're back to the agenda item, 39 Melville Road, Brunswick West. Now, could I have a motion from councillors? Councillor Kavanagh.
Thanks, Mr Chair. I would like to move the officer recommendation on pages 54, 55, 56, 57, 58 and 59.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Olivia Carley-Hannon seconding. Thank you. Councillors, is there any debate on this issue? Councillor Bolton.
I came into this meeting thinking that maybe this might be an okay proposal, but I'm actually totally convinced that it's not an okay proposal. I can't believe that there would be a proposal for building, I mean it's probably not the only issue, but a building with a vet's clinic which doesn't provide any kind of car parking for people who are visiting with sick animals. You know, some pets might be little birds and little cats, but you know, how your German Shepherd breaks their leg, how are you going to cart them to the vet on public transport? It's just ridiculous. I think this is, you know, I find this quite a ridiculous proposal, particularly for that. I mean, there's other issues, as the objector raised earlier in the piece about the impact on heritage and the car stackers and so forth. But I just can see so many problems with a use of land as a veterinary centre when it's only providing 3 car parks for 4 staff and not a single car park for someone carrying their sick pet to the clinic. I can only see problems arising out of this proposal, and people, you know, parking in all sorts of bad places in order to try and get close to the vet clinic. So I'm against.
Councillors, any councillor would like to speak for? Yep.
So in terms of the parking, I will agree with the council officers that this is an activity centre, and I grew up near here and I do recognise the issues that we do have with Melville Road, but I believe that by actually increasing the amount of services there, the amount of pedestrians there, and actually turning it into more of an activity centre, that is the way to go into the future. In terms of parking, I know of a number of vets that are on Sydney Road and Lygon Street, and I believe that the access with parking on Hunter Street would be a really clear one where, given the numbers that would be frequenting the vet at any one time, there's easy access for patients to go there. I do agree with my fellow councillors that most likely people will be driving their pets to the vet rather than using public transport. However, given the number of shop fronts there with the parking off-street, I believe that it is adequate. In terms of the size of apartments, I think, once again, you know, it's on Melville Road, it's an area that is going to be increasing in activity, and with the cutting off at the back and still creating nice sort of views and nice frontage to the back streets, I think it's a reasonable development.
Thank you, Councillor Carly Hannon. Do I have any other councillors that wish to speak? Councillor Tapanos?
Thank you. I won't be supporting this development. There's so much about it that I actually don't like. It's not just the car stackers, which I think are a serious issue in themselves, and one thing that we do need to look at as a council, because I just don't think they're going to be used, and that is going to impact even more adversely on the car parking issue, because I just don't think residents will actually bother putting them in the car stackers. But I just can't believe that any person with an injured pet will probably take public transport to go to the vet. I think that a vet needs car parking. The majority of the people that would be visiting, I assume, would be driving a car and taking their pet with a vehicle. So I think car parking is a major concern, but I also think that it is grossly out of character for what we see in Melville Road. I know it's a transitioning area, but it's not Sydney Road, it's not Lygon Street. We don't want to have those really high densities on Melville Road. And I think that if you have a look at what is being proposed with the balconies at the back, in particular, there's nothing like that really on Melville Road. And just because it's next to a beautiful heritage building, doesn't mean that everyone along Melville Road should build to those heights. Like, that building has been there for many, many years, and it's obviously served a particular purpose as a theatre and you know, a significant purpose for when it was built. I don't really want to see those types of heights and this type of development being the norm right across Melville Road. So I think that we're setting a dangerous precedent, and I know that 4 stories is probably compliant, but I think that we need to be sympathetic, particularly when it is next to a heritage building. I think it would detract from the heritage. I think it's out of character. I don't think there's enough car parking. I think car stackers are a problem. So for all of those reasons and more, I would be urging councillors to vote no.
Thank you, Councillor Tapanos. Councillor Abood.
Okay, so this is one of those tricky applications that comes to us where it's multi-dimensional. It's made its own worst enemy out of Estonia House just because, by its very existence, Estonia House has made it okay to have a great big huge building right next to it, which might not have happened if Estonia House wasn't so high itself. I don't think that Melville Road should have 4 stories on it anywhere, but I don't think that's not a decision that I can make or change. My sister is a cat lady, has a couple of cats, and has had a couple of cats for as long as I've known her, which is a long time. And I've driven those cats to the vet many, many, many times. She's never driven a car. So I don't agree that people who don't drive don't own pets. I think that we need to commend the fact that this is a local vet opening up a business in the city, which is in tune with me as a council responsible for EcoDev, which I am now. But there's so much about this development that I don't like. I think it's going to be a hot box. I think it's going to be a great big eyesore, but I don't feel like I have the levers here to knock it back, so I will be supporting it. But I hope that what happens is the detail when it's drilled down with the planning officers about the glazing, about, you know, considering that a hot property like that is going to need more than a couple of, or however many air conditioners it's going to take. And then if it's going to be encumbered by air conditioners, how will they be run? I mean, the government's talking about us running out of power on a regular basis. We're meant to be scared of running out of power. So don't build stuff that makes people need to use more power. You know, this is legacy. The city, some of us are going to be here forever. I don't feel like I can knock it back, but I just don't like it.
Thank you, Councillor Abood. Councillor Davison.
I'll be voting against this, and in all good conscience, I think it's totally impractical, and it's impractical for so many reasons. How can I sit here and say that this is going to be a good development for the people of Moreland? It's not. For Councillor Abood's reasons, the ESD quality is totally out. It's a hot box. For the veterinary reasons, I've got 2 cats and a German Shepherd. My mum takes care of the cats and I take care of the German Shepherd. She would not be transporting my cat, who is slightly obese, to the vet in a little crate like that. It's heavy. She cannot do that. She would need to drive there, catch public transport. That's not going to happen. I won't be going to that vet. I'll be taking my cats and my pets to the vet that has parking, where she can park and where I can take my dog, which is a German Shepherd, to that vet if ever he's sick. Also, the diversity in the dwelling type, 2 bedrooms, that's not practical. We're growing families here in Moreland. We've got such high birth rates. This is not designed for the people of Moreland. It's not designed for us. I live here, I walk these streets. I will not be going there, and I would not be encouraging anybody to purchase dwellings in there that's so impractical for our future. And for those reasons, I'm going to be voting against this, and I think it's absolutely appalling that we're getting these types of applications here.
Thank you, Councillor Davidson. Councillor Farley.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be voting in favour of the Council Officer's recommendation, Councillor Kavanagh's motion. Just to step the residents that are concerned through this, over the last few weeks, you've done a fantastic job in terms of negotiating some concessions from this developer. Number one being that he has, or she has, removed the top floor's apartment overseeing the eastern side houses onto the back. That's a great concession that the developers actually put aside. Another concession is that the developers changed the facade in order to work with the heritage and work with the building next door, make sure it sort of looks appropriate for that particular area. Now, those concessions that we've negotiated could be lost, and the way it would be lost if councillors tonight vote against the development, the developer then goes to VCAT and puts on the table the full development. And so those concessions that you've actually negotiated will be lost in that format. And it's very likely that VCAT would support this development, given their record and given the council officer's advice. Given that advice, I would rather have a development with those concessions in place to better support the residents in the area. So this is coming from a place of better supporting the residents. Secondly, with the veterinary clinic and parking, there are 2 consulting rooms and a reception area. This isn't a 100-seat restaurant with hundreds of people coming in to visit the place. It's 2 consulting rooms, a reception area. You might at capacity have 4 people visiting at one time. Melville Road can sustain that level of visitor parking for that veterinary clinic. We're not having a big disco here. It's a 4 people at one time veterinary clinic. In terms of diversity of business into the area, I am sure the local residents would prefer a business like this coming to the area rather than, I don't know, another cafe where far more people would have to drive into the area, plus they won't have to go too far in order to receive some quality veterinary services. So from that perspective, there are a couple of wins here that we've negotiated on behalf of residents they want to see through rather than lost. It's pointless for this to just go to VCAT and then they just build the entire thing with extra apartments and who knows what happens with the facade. But I'd rather those concessions come through with the council officer's recommendation, and I'm very satisfied with the parking arrangements of a 2 consulting room veterinary clinic. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Finally, Councillor Riley.
Yeah, thank you, councillors, for the debate. I just want to point out that in clause 1F, the issues around shading on all east and west facing rooms for glazing and so on are detailed there. I think people are overstating the design that's been accounted for in terms of the heat that this building will sustain, but I'm hoping people can have a look at that and reflect on that, because it's trying to deal with shading and other aspects of ESD. We do need to have higher environmental sustainable design. In my view, I'd like to see higher standards in place. We don't have them. We don't at the moment. We are advocating the state government around that, and other city councils are actually following our example around this, and we've managed to extend our principles for another 6 months, and we're hoping the minister will see to making those permanent. And I'd like to see additional star ratings included in our designs. I think the other councillors have addressed the parking issues quite adequately. At the end of the day, this is about coming to a compromise around, or trying to come up with an acceptable arrangement. And there's been a lot of negotiation on part of the community around and adjacent to this. It's no higher than the Estonia House. And it is a neighbourhood centre that we are developing here. We aren't talking about a whole strip along Melville Road. This is a neighbourhood centre, and I think it's really important that we don't give people incorrect impression. It's actually located in this area that some of this 3 to 4 stories will be included in that, and it is within that height limit. And I know that the slope of the land has been an issue, but it really has been addressed with cutting off the top floor there. So I will be supporting this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Riley. If there's no further debate from councillors here, I'd like to put Councillor Kavanagh's motion to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried. I'll now pass back to the officer. Okay, well, Councillor Tapanos has called for a division. All those in favour, again, can you please raise your hand? Thank you. And all those against? Okay, thank you, councillors. I'll now pass on back to the officer for the next steps.
Thank you, councillors. The Urban Planning Committee have resolved that a notice of decision to grant a planning permit for a five-storey development, including the veterinary centre at 39 Melville Road. All residents will receive a copy of the notice of decision and will have 21 days in which to lodge an appeal through VCAT. Thank you.
Thank you. So now moving on to the third item on tonight's agenda, 126 Derby Street, Pascoe Vale, MPS 2017-29.
Right, thank you. Thank you, councillors. Introducing the item 126 Derby Street in Pascoe Vale. It's a proposal that seeks approval for the construction of 4 dwellings. So the site has adjoins a childcare centre, and then adjoining to the north is a couple of units. The proposal is set out on the common driveway, which contains 4 dwellings. You'll note that there are 4 double garages off the driveway, living areas at ground floor. Then at first floor contains a number of bedrooms. So the proposal looks like in elevations. Public notice was undertaken and 28 objections were received. The key concerns raised in the objections relate to overlooking and traffic safety. There was also a planning and information discussion meeting convened. Following that meeting, the permit applicant agreed to reduce the rear dwelling to single storey and screen windows that face the childcare centre, amongst other things. Those changes are best described on these amended plans, which most notably show that rear dwelling as a single storey dwelling containing 2 bedrooms. The recommendation begins on page 98 of the agenda and recommends a notice of decision be granted to issue a planning permit. One of the key recommendations in the permit is to formalise the offer made by the permit applicant, which includes making the rear dwelling single storey. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Are there any objectors here tonight that wish to speak to this item? Please, just at the front there, if you'd like to come forward to the lectern.
Hi, my name is Louise Wood. I'm the Centre Director of Derby Street Children's Centre, so we're property adjacent. One of our major concerns is that we have 70 children come to the centre daily, so cater for 113 families all up. Children range from 3 months right through to 6 years. The driveway that is currently proposed runs down our babies and our 2 to 3 year old yards. So our children, basically between us and potentially 8 cars, is a thickness of a fence. So our biggest concern is the safety of our children. We'd see many and many times where cars were driven through fences, shops. We all remember Sophie, who got hit by a car years ago in a childcare centre, and that is our biggest concern for our safety of our children. I don't want to see any of our children hurt by a car that might accidentally press the accelerator rather than the brake and comes into our yards. The other biggest concern too is the safety of our children with the emissions of the cars. We can't guarantee they're going to be economical driven cars. They could be old, they could be sitting out, turned on, emissions just going into our children, into the yard. We pride ourselves on our centre being a natural based centre. We are currently just had a building to our other side of the property that's been turned into a double story. So we have gone from never been overlooked to our beautiful trees, our massive big spaces, to all of a sudden we're going to be completely overlooked in a city centre, which potentially we could lose families because of that. I know myself, if I was putting my baby into a childcare centre and I saw that there's a driveway on the other side of a fence, I wouldn't go to that centre, because my biggest concern would be the safety of my child, as would all the parents that as you saw, the petitions were mostly from our families. Same concern is that driveway. You know, ideally we would like it swapped to the other side. Yes, we know that there is going to be developments. We accept that and we understand that. But our main concern is the safety of those children. Is it great for our children to be outside and with people? I know there have been obscured windows, but you've still got that property right in your face as a child. For us, yes, great to put units there, but can they be single story, and can the driveway be moved for the maintain the safety of all our children and also all of our educators? It is a council-owned property, so in the end, council is going to be responsible if someone is hurt because of a car going through that fence, as is where we'll be. So our biggest issue is that driveway. Yes, there's been bollards proposed, and that was through our meeting that we had with council, but are they going to stop a car? Are they going to stop the emissions? We can't guarantee that because we don't know what the bollards are going to be made of. We don't know if they're going to be cemented into the ground, whether they're just going to be plastic ones. Will the car still go through that? So that is a major concern for us, for the children. If you look down Derby Street in our vicinity, you will notice majority of those units are single story. The closest double story unit is now on the corner of Derby and Essex, and the next further one is up closer to the shops. To maintain that scape of the street, it would be nice to see that there is still single units. Obviously protect the neighbourhood and also the children in their environment. Other people address the other issues that we have, so we don't take up all your time.
Thank you. The next speaker. Yep.
Evening, councillors. My name's Elisa Flavelle from Unit 9134 Derby Street. If you actually refer back to your pictures, it's an unusual layout, our block of units, where our address is Derby Street, but you actually drive in and run actually behind those 2 actual townhouses that you just showed.
Actually, can we go back to the objectives drawing, because that gives a bit of a feel.
Yeah. So obviously once upon a time those were actually subdivided. So ours has a main driveway and there are 9 units and they actually come in and turn around. Okay, so my unit, I've already got 2 neighbours as soon as I walk out, so I'm completely boxed in as it is, and by then I'm actually on the north side of the property in question. And I will actually make reference to the amendments that were made, which makes reference that they are addressing my concerns, and therefore Unit 4 is going to be made single story. That does not address my concerns at all, because it is actually Unit 3 that impacts on my property. Also, for everyone's information, I'm actually a foster carer for the state of Victoria through Anglicare in Broadmeadows. I can provide confirmation of that on request if the councillors are actually require that. So therefore, my priority is to my foster carer or my foster children, the safety of my members and to protect their identities. A lot of my children are subjected to protection orders against their actual parents. So therefore, going to a community playground is sometimes not an option. So my grassed area is actually the only area that these children can play. And based on that and the actual vicinity, safety of my area is the actual reason why I was actually approved as a foster carer. In 2014, the protection laws actually changed again for the protection of children, which I will actually read out to you, which actually gave, 2014, which actually was to strengthen government's responsibilities for children in out-of-home care. So child protection is actually a shared responsibility for family, community and the government. And if you actually refer to also Section 5 of the Child Wellbeing and Safety Act, my responsibility is for those who develop and provide services, which I do provide a service, is to give the highest priority to the promotion and protection of child safety, health and development. So based on that, I know I can't get rid of these units. I know that's not going to be a possibility. However, my resolution is that Unit 3 also be made single storey. It is a metre from my fence line, so I am going to have increased noise where my children are and the children's bedrooms are. Also, I would like an increased fence than the height than normal. Also, this is going to sound ridiculous, but I would actually also like the railings on the other side of the fence so I don't have the potential of children actually being able to climb over the fence. Also, too...
Sorry, I'll just get you to summarise, please.
Yep, also, just quickly, single-storey units are actually in high demand. Ours are single-storey, and the amount of interest and contact we get from real estate agents is huge because people are actually wanting that single level instead of living in that boxy environment with stairs and also with children. It also provides greater option for people with disabilities and I suppose a greater demand for them to actually choose single-storey homes as well. So, yes. That is me.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there any other objectors that wish to speak? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Simone Trunning. I live on Derby Street and my children go to the childcare centre. So my main concern, along with my fellow objectors, is the concern of the children, particularly regarding the impact of widening the driveway of the property, of the proposed property. The crossover area, which will reduce the car parking out the front of the centre. Currently there are 3 parking spaces at the very front of the centre and 2 within the property of the centre. As you imagine, parking can be sparse when it's peak hours of drop-off and pick-up between 7:30 and 9 to 9:30 when the kindergarten session starts. And I find you have to wait quite a bit to be able to get close enough. My children are a bit older, so I can walk a bit further. However, if you have a baby or 2 children, it's quite difficult to cross the road, which is also quite busy, and to feel safe and carry a bag and another bag and a child and hold a hand and everything else that comes with having toddlers. So that's my first concern, is the lack of parking in that front space that's accessible directly to the front of the property and not having to cross the road. Regarding the road, there are lots of cars that go down that road. There has been a council survey done which said that there was only 20 cars an hour, which I'm quite... I don't really believe that, especially during that peak hour. Maybe it could be reassessed. Derby Street has been reduced lately to 50 kilometres an hour just within the last week. I believe that goes from Boundary all the way down to at least Gaffney. So that is a step in the right direction. However, the shops up the road have a reduced 40 signed area. I'm just wondering if that can be extended or if during peak hours the speed limit can be reduced, or a signed area of children crossing can occur with the white stripes across the road, just to make it a more visual presence that there are people crossing with children, that kids run out on the road. You know, it's a concern. It's quite a stress some days. If you're in a hurry to get to work, you're running late, it can be quite stressful to perform your daily duties and get yourself to your job and get your children safe. So they're my proposals and objections, and hopefully you'll consider them.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, can I please just mention one further thing?
I'll allow it, but if you're brief, please.
It's only just one thing. And
If you could please come to the lectern.
Just for information, a 3-year-old was actually hit by a car last week in Derby Street up at the primary school. So we are actually dealing with those issues.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. The next objector, would you like to come forward?
Good evening, Chair and Councillors. My name is Mary Di Dominic Antonio. I'm a parent and I send my daughter to Derby Street Children's Centre. I have a risk management background for 20 years and I understand the risks involved with constructing a size that big, a project that big. One of my largest concerns came out of the last meeting in September around this particular development, and that was around the removal of asbestos. We all know the dangers of asbestos. People have died from mesothelioma. Okay? The response from the architect was very substandard. The response was that he'll remove the asbestos a little bit at a time. Now, that does not comply with regulations. The regulation I'm referring to is the Occupational Health and Safety Regs 2017, Part 4.4. Okay, there is a large section in there on demolition. Now, some people choose to take that seriously, others don't. But if you send your daughter to a childcare centre and you've got an architect who's does not seem to have a legal or moral obligation to people in the community and babies, then that is a concern for me as a parent. Okay? The person who's actually going to develop that needs to make sure that it's done safely, and what I'm proposing is that he gives us a better answer than removing the asbestos a bit at a time. That does not cut it. That does not cut it. So I would like for him to go back, have a look at the regs and look at how he's going to remove it safely. Has he identified all the different types of asbestos, where it's located? Does he know where it is? Is he going to engage a professional removalist that's licensed to actually remove it? We don't know any of that information. We haven't been told that. All we've been told is that it's going to be removed a bit at a time. Now, that doesn't cut it. So what I'm proposing is he comes back with a better answer to that, and he reassures us that his answer is compliant with the regulations. WorkSafe have been spoken to regarding this matter, and we have the support of WorkSafe as well. So it's just not me putting in my wind. WorkSafe actually backs us and does actually say that that doesn't cut it. There needs to be a better answer to that and a better plan. So my co-objectors have actually mentioned an array of safety issues, and the developer has a responsibility to document those issues and come up with a plan on how he's going to mitigate those risks. Can't eliminate all the risks, I understand, but how is he going to ensure us that he's actually controlling those risks? And those risks are our children. Breathing in dust, being exposed to traffic incidents, noise, etc. So please consider that, and I'd like to be reassured that when the asbestos is removed, I'm talking about asbestos at the moment, that it is done safely and our children aren't at risk.
Thank you very much. Are there any other objectors that would like to speak? Thank you.
Hello, my name is Julie. I am the Assistant Director at Derby Street Children's Centre. Look, I've been there for 23 years in a risk-free environment. What worries me is that on the boundary of the fence that my colleague had spoken about earlier, there is a brick wall. It's quite a big brick wall. That wall will have to come down. How is it going to come down? We're going to have workers on our property to actually pull that wall down. I've got potential risk to children, staff and families. So that is one of my biggest concerns there. And when are they going to do it? That means the children can't be out in the playground. There are numerous risks that are going to be involved, as well as the material that's going to be used with the fencing that is down that whole driveway. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other objectors here tonight? Okay. Is there a representative for the proponent here that would like to speak? Thank you.
Good evening, councillors. My name is Nicola McGowan. I'm here for Planning Appeals, who is representing the permit applicant. We've read the council officer report and think that that's quite conclusive in its recommendations. So rather than go through that, I might just address some of the objective concerns that we've heard. There's concerns about the use of the driveway on the southern boundary. The permit applicant sees the southern side as the ideal side to put a driveway, rather than use the northern aspect. It's a logical place for it. It also utilises the existing crossover, so there's no additional crossovers proposed here. The good news for this proposal is that all car parking requirements of clause 5206 are complied with, so no parking issues are triggered through the planning scheme. Having said that, though, the concern was about how they might reverse out of their car parks. You'll see on the plans that there's a driveway of a width of 5.9 metres, a bit over, proposed for that turning circle, which is very generous in its width and can actually easily accommodate cars going forward out of the driveway. I understand their concerns about accidents happen. It's quite rare, I would say, that accidents of that nature happen, so rare that they are a news item. However, the applicant has heard their concerns. We are proposing bollards now along the boundary to alleviate these concerns. There's also an acoustic fence being proposed along that boundary. An acoustic fence is generally a double paling fence, so it's actually double the width of a normal fence and therefore double the strength of a normal fence. So I think with the bollards, the strip of landscaping and therefore the mound that you would have to mount and the double fence, the acoustic fence that's going along the boundary, that we feel that we've alleviated. We feel that those concerns should be alleviated. Glazing has occurred to the upper floors. I see that in the council recommendation, because they're south-facing windows to the childcare centre, it's recommended that rather than obscure glazing, that upward slats be placed on the windows instead, and that will allow light in but no view out. We're supportive of that. We understand that there needs to be no overlooking, however it's managed, we're okay with that. In regards to noise, I would say that the private open space proposed here is quite generous. It's all above what is required in clause 55 of the planning scheme, and it's actually away from the childcare centre. So whilst you may have some car movement along that driveway in a fairly relaxed form, because it'll be slow and there's not that many cars, there's only 7, the open space itself is actually away from the childcare centre, so no one will be climbing fences to look over, as was elucidated before, on the other side. And of course it's an acoustic double fence, so there's unlikely to be those railings, but if they are, of course, they can be on the northern neighbour's side. In regards to asbestos and the removal of the brick fence, of course, that's a building regulation matter, not a planning regulation matter, so I can't address that. I also am not aware of those regulations, but I'm sure that will be addressed at the building stage. I feel that the noise that will be generated from the units will be no more than a usual residential noise requirement. And in regards to cars revving and whatnot, even in a single dwelling, you can have any number of cars in a backyard doing the same thing. And the garage at the moment is on the back. That driveway does currently exist down that length of the driveway. Okay. We feel that with the rear unit being single storey in form, it's a good outcome. I can see you're winding me up. And we support the council officer recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms McGowan. Just while we have you there, before we jump to other councillors, I'd just like to ask you, the bollards that are proposed, what material are they?
I'm not actually sure, to be honest. It's not been something that I've heard in discussions. It's just something that we said bollards will be put up. So I'm quite happy for that to be a condition on permit, that they're a solid bollard and cemented into the ground in a permanent feature, not plastic or something like that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bolton, I think you had a question?
Yeah, that was on bollards was going to be one of my questions. The other thing is I was yes, I'm aware that asbestos removal is more building regulations rather than planning, but it would seem to me that the developer, if they want to allay the concerns of the community, would be making some assurance to the community that they would be using a professional asbestos removalist, because there are many houses that are knocked down where asbestos is not removed in a proper way. I'm very aware of that, so it would seem that would be a simple thing. The other question, you said that there was a reason why it was preferable to have the driveway on the southern side rather than the northern side, so I'd like to know what that is. And I'd like to know also if you've given thought to maybe accommodating the resident who spoke before, who is a foster carer.
Okay. So with regard to the asbestos issue, I noticed that the comment before was they asked the architect, not the developer. Architect should also have been much more compliant with his answer, and I will raise that in my discussions after today. I'm sure that the developer doesn't want to break the law. There's no heritage overlay on this property, so it could be demolished at any time. And of course, all building regulations need to be adhered to, so that's that. In regards to the driveway, it's an existing driveway, so using what is there is always a good starting base for a design analysis. Also, the crossover is already there and there's a street tree, so we won't be impacting on the streetscape in any form. By having the driveway to the south and then the cars coming in gives the opportunity for private open space then to the north side of the dwellings, so that you get optimal solar access into those garden spaces. So that's why you would prefer, in a planning sense, you'd prefer and in a living sense, you'd prefer the driveway on the south and open space and living areas to the north.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions?
So, councillors, can I please have a motion for this agenda item?
Ask another question first
of
the planning officer. I was wondering if in discussion about the plans, if council had sort of already put forward some sort of criteria about the nature of the bollards?
Through the chair, we had a discussion at the Planning and Information Discussion meeting about how we could protect the childcare centre from potential traffic impacts. We didn't have a discussion regarding the detail of how the bollards would be constructed.
Okay. So,
I sort of feel as if we need to put some, I've got a motion to move, but I hadn't dealt with the issue of the bollards.
Okay, well, maybe we'll ask councillors if they would like to move a motion to start with.
I'll move my motion to start with.
Okay, and what? So you've got an alternative motion?
Yeah, I've got an alternative motion.
Okay, if you'd like to just state that, and then we'll see if we can get a second.
Yeah. So my motion is at the moment it's currently the officer's recommendation with an amendment to deal with and my amendment is to deal, or the slight variation from the officer's recommendation was to deal with the issues facing the resident who is a foster carer, and so it is to delete the first floor to dwelling 3 with no changes to the setbacks at ground floor in order to achieve a single-storey, one-bedroom dwelling with a single car parking space, and that the boundary fence to the north be increased in height from 1.95 metres to a minimum of 2.1 metres.
Okay, is there a seconder for that motion? Okay, for want of a seconder.
I'm happy to move the council officer's recommendation.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Farnley. Is there a seconder for the officer's recommendation?
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. Councillor Farnley.
Very briefly, thank you to the residents for raising your concerns. What's important for me with my consideration is seeing a developer listening to those concerns, and the first thing that they've done is removed the
second floor off the final apartment. The second thing they've done in terms of your question regarding where the driveway is located, I assume you are not suggesting that the backyards should be adjoining the childcare centre. That would actually be not an ideal outcome. Obviously, you don't want people's backyards where they can peek into the childcare centre. So where the driveway is actually makes a lot of sense because that then creates a bit of a buffer zone, so to speak. And then I do appreciate the developer putting in those bollards to address the concern regarding cars driving backing into that childcare centre, which is a concern I also share with you. In regards to 3 of those properties becoming 3-bedroom apartments, units, that's an ideal scenario from a sense of housing diversity. We spoke about this earlier in the meeting. It will mean that families can come to that area rather than in a 2-unit environment, which is typically a young couple, so to speak, or professional couple, or what it may be. But with a young family, it'll be a more ideal area for families to come in, especially the childcare centre just across in terms of neighbouring that space. So I'm happy with the council.
Thank you, Councillor. Finally, is there a councillor who would like to speak against this item? Any other councillors that would like to speak to this item?
I just wanted to ask a question, if I could, about... so my concern is actually to do with the demolition and asbestos removal. And I just wondered what levers we can offer the women at the childcare centre, because I've noticed lots of times what happens is someone realises it's being removed, they call council says call WorkSafe, and before you know it, it's all been put in the back of a dodgy ute and dropped at the tip or wherever. And it seems like my issue is not really with the development itself, but I am a little bit concerned about the asbestos removal. And I was just wondering what tools we have to deal with that. Or any recommendations or advice that we can offer?
In terms of advice, councillors, the responsibility does sit with WorkSafe, and pleased to hear that the residents had already been proactive in that sense and contacted WorkSafe to put WorkSafe on notice of a potential demolition. What we often find is that the process of removing the asbestos is through an accredited asbestos removalist, and they will go in prior to demolition, search for known sources of asbestos, identify asbestos, and then remove that. And depending on the amount of asbestos, there's a requirement to notify WorkSafe or not. And then maybe possibly 2 weeks later, the demolisher may come along and active demolition is seen, and that results in a source of complaint and concern, which is legitimate. In terms of council's responsibility, there is very little responsibility for council, but what we do is we try and assist residents by making contact with WorkSafe and trying to confirm that the necessary approvals are in place, etc. There's a second, I guess, area of protection in that the building surveyor, before issuing the building permit for demolition, needs to be provided with a copy of the certificate for the asbestos removal. So we can also check our files at that time and see whether we've been provided with the detail by the building surveyor, or assist residents by contacting the building surveyor to see whether they have cited that certificate. So we play more of a support role, I guess, and a communication role back to residents, which is as far as we can really take that issue without direct responsibility for it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Abood, do you have a follow-up question to that?
I just wanted to talk to the motion itself.
Okay, I think...
I've got a slight amendment which might be acceptable.
Okay.
Slight.
If you'd like to just state your slight amendment, we'll see if it's acceptable to the...
It is to define the bollards a little bit more. This is not perfect, but solid bollards which are cemented into the ground along the rest of it as the officers recommend.
Is that acceptable to the mover and seconder?
Just confirming, I'm happy with it if the council officers are happy with that.
So am I.
Yep, no objections to that, that's fine.
Put it part of the substantive motion now.
Yep, so that's acceptable to the...
Maybe if we get it on the... on the screen. So.
Yep. Suji, can you read that out again for the...
So it just simply says solid bollards which are cemented into the ground, then the rest of the point is the same.
Yep. And so that insertion there is acceptable to both the mover and seconder, so that becomes part of the substantive motion. Are there any other councillors that would like to talk to this agenda item?
Yeah, so I'm happy with the dialogue and the tweaks that have been made to accommodate the concerns of the childcare, and I will be supporting the officer's recommendation. But I just wonder if maybe we could make contact with the childcare before or in the next few days or something, just to address the concerns about the asbestos removal. So I understand we're not responsible, but as a council, we can just make sure there's a bit of support, because in my experience, you don't tangle with women who are raising young children, because it's full on.
Through the chair, that's also my experience, Councillor Bird. I'm happy to speak to any of the residents post this meeting, or the operators of the childcare centre.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Riley.
I'll look just quickly. Thank you for the presentations and the questions and concerns being raised. No, I do believe that a lot of the issues have been dealt with, and as a teacher and somebody who's been involved somewhere with childcare for children in foster care and so on, I hear those concerns, and I believe that the provisions that have been provided here around not shading but overlooking provisions and so on will help address those. So I'm hoping that will satisfy you and make sure that those children are being cared for by all of the community. And I would encourage the childcare centre and the new community that will arrive with this development to actually work together and develop good relationships to, in fact, see that is an outcome, because we have seen that in some of the other applications where people get together and talk about your common interests or competing interests and how you can actually work as a community. So I'm more than happy to help work in that stead once you get to that point when people start to be moving into those places. So I'm supportive of this motion, even with all the sensitivities around it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Riley. Councillor Bolton?
Yes, I think people have raised many good points tonight, both in the childcare centre but other objectors as well. I will vote against the motion because I feel that not all of the objectors' interests are reflected within this motion itself. Now, while I understand, developers when they buy a site don't necessarily know the circumstances of all the neighbours, so it was probably just a fluke. They happened to buy a property which neighboured someone who is a foster carer, including of children under protection orders. But I am disappointed that they didn't take any steps to resolve the issues. We're already a society where there's a lack of foster carers. There aren't enough foster carers for the number of children that are removed from their homes. And this development will most likely mean that this foster carer will be lost to the system, because her ability to foster care is not just based on her character, but on approval for this particular property or for this sort of layout without the overlooking kind of issues. I have actually visited the premises and was shown around. I mean, her yard is on the northern side that abuts this development is only really a couple of metres wide, and then it's only across the fence another metre to the development. So it is, it's highly likely that she will be a foster carer lost to the system. So on that strength of that, I'm going to vote against it. And I also think the childcare centre has raised a lot of very important points as well. And on the traffic issues in Derby Street, I mean, that sort of can't really be dealt with in the context of a planning application, but there have been petitions raised recently about Derby Street, and I'm very interested in helping any residents who've got an interest in the issue of safe pedestrian crossings and traffic safety in Derby Street.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. And following on from Councillor Bolton there, I do strongly emphasise that the residents who are concerned with traffic issues, speed, those sort of things. I know I speak for myself and probably most of the councillors here. We are willing to work with you to try and alleviate some of those issues outside of this planning space. So please do get in touch with us regarding those things in particular. Okay, councillors, is there anyone else who would like to speak to this item? No? Okay. In that case, I'd like to put Councillor Farnley's motion to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried. I'll now pass back to the officer for next steps.
Thank you, Councillor. The committee is resolved to issue a notice of decision as outlined on page 98 onwards in the agenda, except for the amendment suggested by Councillor Bolton. That decision will be posted to all objectors and the permit applicant. All objectors have 21 days in which to lodge a review to the Victorian Civil and Administrative Tribunal. If no review is lodged, the planning permit will then issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Also, if it's acceptable to councillors, I might just call a 2-minute adjournment just for a quick toilet break.
I'm Moana Hope, most people call me Mo. I've grown up playing at Glenroy Football Club and now I play for Collingwood Football Club. I grew up in Glenroy, born and bred. My first year ever I played at Hatfield. From the second year all the way up to under 12s, it's Glenroy Football Club. I'm one of 14 and the reason why I got into it was my dad and my brothers. I used to watch all their games from the age of 3. It was community football, so it was the best type of football. So proud. Local footy is really important, I think, especially Glenroy being the suburb and this being the main supplier of sports for the community. You look at what Glenroy are trying to do here, they're trying to bring up a women's team and in the background is my niece who just finished under 12. So at the moment she hasn't got a pathway. So Melanie's played for Glenroy from the same age as me, from the age of 7, and she is now too old to play boys football. So she's excited about the girls team, aren't you? Very. So she's extremely competitive, not as good as me. Calm down. Probably a few kids are not on the right road, and I think if you give them that sport or that outlet to go and meet new people, it can benefit the community in more ways than one. What do I say to girls? It doesn't matter who you are, what your skill level you are, what fitness level you are. It's a good environment to be in, it's fun, you meet new mates. This is where you want to be, so come down and have a kick.
So I'm Claire Johnston and I'm an accredited cricket bat maker and the first female in the world. I learnt how to make cricket bats from Ian Cullen. There's a lot of bats out there for men and I felt that there was an opportunity there to actually work with women to make better bats and to actually make them for their style. So recently I was commissioned to make 5 cricket bats for the Pascoe Vale Hadfield Cricket Club for their under-13s girls cricket team. And to see their faces when they were given the cricket bats was just brilliant. So what I'd really love to be able to do is to keep working with my local community, the local cricket clubs, particularly the women, and work to make great cricket bats.
My name is Michael Tortoni. I'm the founder of Melbourne's legendary jazz club, Bennett's Lane. I've recently moved to the very, very cool Brunswick. The Jazz Lab here on Leslie Street, Brunswick is Melbourne's new home of jazz. In my old club, you might have seen Prince for a late night set, or the Wynton Marsalis Band, or even the Harry Connick Jr. Trio. My new club will also host stars of contemporary music, starting with the Bill Frisell Trio for the Melbourne International Jazz Festival, as well as local stars. So drop in for some great music and a drink at the Jazz Lab.
So my name is Zainab Aboueid. I'm 19 years old and I currently study the Bachelor's of Law and International Relations at La Trobe University. I partake in my local community by volunteering with local MPs such as Peter Killil. I like to also attend and organise events that surround family violence to help ensure that women are heard and young women have voices. I wanted to represent myself as a Muslim woman and represent my community, so I thought why not start at a young age, so when I grow up perhaps I can be in Parliament one day. I feel like I should take advantage of these opportunities and make sure that I advocate on behalf of women, especially in my community that are subjected to family violence.
My name's Leslie. I have been with Moreland Family Daycare as an educator for over 36 years, I think. Family Daycare is a wonderful organisation. We look after children in our own home, they blend in with the family, and it's fantastic.
I love Family Daycare.
I can choose my own hours, very flexible. I've made wonderful friendships with lots of the families. I'm now looking after children of the children I used to care for. The children just growing and developing is a wonderful, wonderful experience for me every day. I'd recommend Family Daycare to anybody and everybody. Oh, where's my Scouty snuggle? Where's my Scouty snuggle? Can I have a Scouty snuggle? How's your tea party going?
My name's Hilary. I've been with Moreland Family Daycare for 8 months now and I absolutely love it. The main reason I started with Family Daycare was to be with my little one. Family Daycare is a small environment, so mostly I only have 4 children and it's in a home. Moreland have been really supportive of the whole thing and they helped me find children when I first started. There's so many benefits of working Family Daycare and becoming an educator. Working in your own home, flexible hours, also just watching the other children grow and being such a part of their life. I recommend to educators that want a good life balance if they have their own child. Family Daycare is a great avenue to go down.
Hey Moreland, today I'm down in St Kilda for the Midsummer Pride March supporting the LGBTQ community. It's a beautiful day. I'm proud to be here representing Moreland, walking behind so many wonderful dedicated people. This march goes towards exactly what our values are. At Moreland, we're one community proudly diverse.
More pride! More pride! More pride! More pride! More pride! More pride!
I'm Moana Hope, most people call me Mo. I've grown up playing at Glenroy Football Club and now I play for Collingwood Football Club. I grew up in Glenroy, born and bred. My first year ever I played at Hatfield. From the second year all the way up to under 12s, it's Glenroy Football
Proceedings.
Club.
Thank you for bearing with us for a second time tonight. So I'll pass across to the officer to discuss 22 Nicholson Street, Coburg, MPS 2016-990.
Thank you, Councillor. Before I start with the presentation, I'd just like to note an amendment to the officer's recommendation that's just occurred in the last day, and that's as a result of 4 objections that have been received after the report was finalised. And I've got on the screen the changed condition, or the additional condition 1I, which says the eastern perimeter of the first floor terrace of dwelling 3 screened to 1.7 metres above finished floor level. I'll go through that in detail during the presentation, but that's in response to a late objection. So the proposals for to develop the land for 3 dwellings, 2 double-storey dwellings and 1 triple-storey dwelling, and a reduction of 1 car space associated with dwelling 1. The subject site is highlighted blue there, and you can see from the different colours of the map the different zonings that apply to the area. The subject site's zone general residential zone, but it's to the south is a commercial 1 zone. There's mixed use zone, and to the east you've got neighbourhood residential zone. Here's some photographs showing the immediate context. You've got the subject site on the top left-hand side, and then on the top right-hand side you have the adjoining dwelling at 101 and 103 Moore Street. Down the bottom right we have the Nicholson, a 9-storey development, and bottom left we have the adjoining property located that fronts Nicholson Street to the north of the subject site. The immediate context also includes 2- and 3-storey townhouses on Moore Street, the Coburg Islamic Centre on Nicholson Street, and another photo showing the subject site in the context of the Nicholson down the bottom right-hand side. So I put on the screen the advertised plan. The proposal again is for 3 dwellings. It originally had the advertised plan showing a double crossing off Moore Street and a single crossing located in this location with bedrooms at the ground level, boundary wall development along these locations, and the front dwelling on Nicholson Street obviously having its presentation towards Nicholson Street and the side access along the side. The upper levels are the living areas and balconies, and then we have the elevations. That's the top is the Moore Street elevation. Then what it looks like from Nicholson Street on the top left-hand side, and a 3D perspective of the proposal. So they're the advertised plans. Following the receipt of objections and working with council officers, the applicant has submitted revised plans dated 20th of August. They're informal plans for discussion, and they're referenced in the officer recommendation. The main changes are an increase in the amount of open space in the top right-hand corner here, which is closest to the sensitive interfaces, and also the double crossings being removed and 3 single crossings have been proposed. On the upper level, we can see that the terrace has been placed in this location here when previously that was all a solid mass, and that breaks up the view to the private open space there, and the garage on the boundary here has been taken off and it's an open car space. It's the elevation of the 20th August amended plan. Streetscape elevation. The key change there, it's still 3 stories, is introduction of wooden panels. Through working with officers, a further amendment was made in relation to the front dwelling, and they're the 26th of October plans, which is increasing the accessibility of the first unit by making it the bathroom dimensions bigger and changing the configuration of the bedroom to enable it to be visitable. Following public notice, 9 objections have been received. The key issues are the 3-storey building being inappropriate, off-site amenity impacts and impacts on car parking. There was particular concern in relation to the loss of off-street car parking in front of the subject site. The amended plans have addressed that, and now there's no loss of on-street car parking as a result of the proposal. So it's recommended that a notice of decision to grant a planning permit be issued based on the amended plans, and just in red there is the additional condition that I noted at the start of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Darren. Now I'd like to call for any objectors sitting in the gallery tonight, if you'd like to come forward. Yep, this officer.
Hi, my name's Richard Cox. I live a couple of houses down from the development. I guess my main cause for concern is the officer's report, and I guess it was stated again tonight that there's no loss of on-street car parking as a result of the development. However, I don't believe that's the case. At the moment, we have the shared driveway at 101, 103 Moore Street, and there are 2 existing car spaces between that and the existing crossover to 22 Nicholson Street, and there are then a further 2 on the other side of the crossover, and then there's a no standing zone. Now, with the amended plans that have been submitted, we get 2 car spaces in front of 22 Nicholson Street, but because the crossover has been moved to the boundary of the subject site, it means there's only space for a single car park between the crossover and our shared crossover. So, and I did email some people at the weekend with this, but I can hand out a sort of a diagram to demonstrate that, like that, and some photos of what's going on. So I guess I just the other thing that's a bit concerning to me is the fact that at the moment there's a single crossover in that stretch of Moore Street. Moore Street can be really busy with traffic, particularly at that end, because you have the Nicholson apartment entry and cars are often backed up. So I guess I'm just concerned that introducing 2 additional crossovers and the vehicle movements associated with that I guess it just seems like a dumb idea. And I guess my feeling is that potentially two dwellings could be accommodated quite easily, but I feel that 3 dwellings and the impact the changing of that crossover makes is, I guess it seems to me it goes against the planning policy that says that the location of crossovers should maximise the retention of on-street car parks. So, yeah, that's it really.
Thank you very much. Are there any other objectors that would wish to forward?
Good evening, councillors.
Good evening.
I didn't have time to print my notes, forgive my massive laptop. There's a united concern among residents in the area about...
Sorry, Helen, if you could just state your name.
Sorry, forgive me. Helen Kratzman, Moore Street resident.
Thank you.
Sorry. There's a united concern among the residents about the lack of coordination between the variety of developments affecting Moore Street's amenity. We've held community meetings, we've called for a precinct plan for our neighbourhood activity centre. Council have declined. The Planning Minister recently declined to support mandatory height limits in our area. And there's only one way in and one way out of Moore Street. Now, Councillor Tapanos said before, we need to think about what areas are going to look like in the future. You know about Amendment C160, you know it's 300 plus apartments, you know Council resolved to not allow through traffic, but I'm pretty sure if you really think about it, you could acknowledge that there would be vehicles travelling down Moore Street to park down that bottom end if their apartment was located closer to the Moore Street interface as opposed to the Moreland Road interface. You may not know about 102 to 108, which has a planning application going to VCAT in April. That was outright rejected by Moreland Council Planning Department. Thank you very much. And it's 61 apartments with car stackers. So, car stackers, some cars fit in them, some cars don't. They take 5 minutes to operate, in the development, it's going to take, ages to manoeuvre, several moves to manoeuvre in and out. So all of these things I think are really valuable or will take up valuable car parking space of ours, but also will generate a lot of traffic on our street. Now, the issue with the 3 crossovers is that they're going to be the crossover and then a car park spot and then a crossover and a car park spot. Now, we know how difficult it is to manoeuvre out of a driveway on a street that's only 7 metres wide. There are no standing zones on the other side of the street. However, so many cars park in them. I've stood up before you before and told you about it and said, it doesn't matter how many times we call the council to come and give tickets to infringement officers, it's still a problem. So these cars are going to be trying to manoeuvre in and out of their driveways. At the same time, Moore Street, because it's so narrow, only one lane of traffic can go out or one lane of traffic can come in. You're nodding your head. You know what it's like at Moss Time. You've seen it, right? Maybe? I don't know. You've mentioned you're familiar with the area and the Coburg Moss. There's other people that are familiar with Campbell Reserve. When all the cars are coming in. So if there's a row of cars coming in, you have to wait on the side, which is on the side of the site, for the traffic to pass through. So if the no standing zone sign has been pushed back a bit to enable an additional car park, to not lose an on-street car park site, what that means is that when the cars are turning into Nicholson and then all the cars all of a sudden zoom out to go out of Moore Street, they're going to be backed up there. And then, of course, you've heard the issues about turning right out of Moore Street. And so if cars are waiting to turn right, cars are backed up in Moore Street, cars might be backed up to turn in, cars might be backed up if they're coming from the city to turn right into Moore Street. And I think it's going to cause quite a bit of a traffic situation. I don't know whether or not, because this land is adjoined to a Vic Roads road and you're amending the crossover, whether that has gone to Vic Roads for approval. I read something about that online today. I'm not a planning expert, but I don't know if that's happened or not.
Sorry, Helen, I'll get you to summarise, please.
So really that's our main problem. I think that two crossovers joined together would be an appropriate solution given all the development that is going to happen down Moore Street. So really, it's a Holmes Mall and Nicholson neighbourhood activity centre, but right now it feels a lot like a Moore Street activity centre. And I guess I really want to say, earlier I think Sue mentioned, planning policy can't impact traffic issues and so forth, but this is an opportunity for council to make a decision where it really can. And I think given the history that you're aware of with Nicholson Street and our campaign for safety in the area, I do hope that you take that into consideration and make a good choice for residents' future amenity.
Thank you. Thank you. If you'd like to come forward.
Hi, my name's Jo Hall and I'm a resident at 101 Moore. Forgive me, I'm quite nervous. I'm a bit out of my comfort zone here. I'm much more comfortable in a hospital ward.
Well, we're not comfortable in hospital.
No,
ward.
So I'm happy to be here tonight. First of all, I want to acknowledge and recognise that there has been a change made in screening. A window that will look straight into my lounge room window, the only window I have for my lounge room. Now that came about today because for the very first time, and I'd like to say it was on the 12th hour, but it wasn't, it was the 6th hour, at midday today, I finally had someone come around and ask me about how I live and how I use this property next to the proposed development. I'm gutted, to be honest. I love the community I live in. I pride myself in living there. I like to be a part of it. And what's happened in this whole process is I've lost faith. So because somebody finally came around and asked how I live in my house and how we as a family live in this house, we've had a change, and that's great. I'm not now going to have someone looking into my lounge room window. I'm not going to have light into my lounge room. I read something along the line that the front of my yard doesn't need the same level of privacy because it's an open space. And I spoke to the gentleman that came around today and he said there was something to do with legislations on being a front yard and not a backyard. Well, I'll tell you right now, I use my front yard. It is the only place that I have green grass. I use that as a wading pool area for my daughter and I to swim and play in summer. I've got video evidence. There is no way any of you walking past will see us. With this development and the changes that are going to occur, I'm going to be open. Well, I'm not going to be able to use this area. My daughter's not going to be safe from the public eye. It's the only area I can do totem tennis, lawn bowls. Okay, this all might not sound very important to the whole grand scheme of thing. I'm not anti-development. I'm really not. But I'm about meaningful development. I'm about meaningful consultation. In my front yard, that is going to be overshadowed, and that is also written in the report. I've got fruit trees. The branches spread further than my kitchen into the community. I've got trees that need full sunshine, that are now thriving because it has full sunshine. With this development going up, and I'm not sure that there was with this development going up, I'm going to be overshadowed. Are these trees going to thrive? More than likely not. Sorry. I'm a bit emotional about this because it's my home and it's my family home. The entrance to my home feels like a little cottage. And it's not until you actually walk into the front gate that you can even see my front door. And that is because I've strategically grown my garden and pruned it. And my neighbours and everyone will vouch that I'm very protective about my privacy. And this is not the changes that... My other issue is that there was changes to these plans that weren't published. I didn't have any opportunity to have an objection to it because of the smaller amount of objectors. Well, changing the driveway area into an open carport actually exposes me and my family a lot more walking into the front gate.
Sorry, Jo, I'll just get you to direct to the councillors, please.
The driveway was going to be a garage driveway, which in fact was going to offer me a little bit more privacy because it would be a brick wall, is now opened up and it's an open carport. So there's trees that have been said that are insignificant, like the almond tree, in that will be coming down and replaced with shrubbery, which is fine, but it's not really going to help me and, sort of, you know what I mean there.
Thank you. If you could please summarise.
Yeah, the other one thing that is a main concern for me is with the parking, the driveway. If you look at the plans, I don't have the language, sorry. It's angled out. So if you walk out my front gate, at the moment, the easement is straight. It's safe. My dog, my children can run out and I can keep control of them and they're safe. The way that the plans is showing is that it's opening up on an angle. This is going to create me a little bit more stress when I've got children and animals that just come straight out of gate and potentially... thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming up and speaking. I know it's quite difficult. Do we have any other objectors that would like to speak?
I've been sitting there for so long I can Meg Ahern, I live in Glengale Street, which is the next street north of Moore Street. I just want to support the residents of Moore Street. Moore Street is not a normal residential street. It should be. It's very narrow. It has been overdeveloped enormously over the last few years. Currently, the amount of traffic that is going up and down Moore Street is absolutely horrific, with 200 apartments. All the cars come out onto Moore Street from there. Now, and further other developments further down the street, plus the soccer club, which is expanding, and there's a lot of traffic that goes up and down from there, plus the Friday prayer time, which generates a huge amount of traffic. I cross Moore Street several times a day, as a lot of other people do, going backwards and forwards from the IGA, cycling to work or whatever. I would have to say it is one of the most dangerous little side streets in the area to cross. And that is because, as people have said, there's traffic that banks up. People are trying to quickly whiz around to get in or out of Moore Street, and you really do have to have eyes in the back of your head, and it's incredibly dangerous. And apart from the fact I think there should really only be 2 dwellings here, not 3, the crossover is a huge problem because, as Richard said, or Helen said, you get traffic banked up, and if you've got just those extra crossovers there, which are right opposite the crossover that takes all the traffic from the Nicholson, all of a sudden you've got this traffic banked up, and I have seen several near misses at that point. We have tried to address this with Vic Roads. As far as I know, so far it's gone nowhere, but I can tell you now that I really think it's an accident waiting to happen. If this development was being proposed at the end of my street, I still think it's too high and the density is too great. I would not have a problem with the crossovers though. This is something that is unique to that specific block on that specific street, if that makes sense. It might be a little bit hard to visualise this unless you actually live there and actually going backwards and forwards across this street. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much. Are there any other objectors? Please come forward.
My name's Barbara Gutton. I live on Moore Street as well, a bit further down. I'm one of those poor people who have to come out in the morning and turn right because I work in St Albans. There's no way to get there by public transport in a reasonable amount of time. So cycling's a bit far as well. The amount of times I get stuck there in the morning is just ridiculous. There have been already a number of accidents. Just I think 2 weeks ago there was a massive accident. The road was blocked. You couldn't even get in the street anymore because it was so bad. We've had the 3 fatalities that unfortunately entitle us now to look into a speed reduction on Nicholson Road. Nothing much has happened there. I don't know where that is. Another problem I see are these traffic reports that your decisions are based on. I think they're a huge problem because they are not representative of the actual situation. In the last 2 years, I think, this is the 3rd development that is proposed. We've got C160, we've got 102 to 108 Moore Street. The traffic reports that have been generated for this, I've seen where they put in those counters and when. They put them in school holidays, when there is no soccer on. Dead time, they know exactly when they need to go in to have the lowest counts. I don't trust those reports, and you should not either. I hold you accountable as the councillors to get reports that are actually representative of what's happening in those areas and not believe what they say because they are not representative. I've seen it numerous times. It did not happen once, it happened several times because there were all these developments, so they obviously did several reports. And it was the first time I thought it was a coincidence. The second time I didn't believe that anymore. And the third time it was clear that this is not the way it should be. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other objectors in the gallery that would like to talk to tonight's? Okay, no problems. Is there is the proponent in the audience, or would you like to come up?
Good evening, councillors, officers and those in the gallery. I'm Daniel from Arcsine, the applicant. I won't speak too specifically on a couple of things, but I guess just want to follow on from those photos and that zoning map that it is a very robust location. We're on a main road, we're near a neighbourhood activity centre, there's industrial zoning, commercial zoning, mixed use zoning, growth zone. So this is a location that is clearly like I said, robust, but for the reason of being well serviced by some amenities like shops, schools, mosques, public transport, trams and buses. So it's Coburg on the border of Brunswick that is where people want to live for those amenities, and where this zoning, which is general residential, supports housing growth for those reasons, that they should see some more developments where they're replacing single dwellings with townhouse style, where we can have a few more people move into the area and share some of those amenities. As far as I guess traffic is one issue that keeps coming up, given that Nicholson Street is a Category 1 road, we haven't been able to put a crossover on Nicholson Street because it just won't be supported by big roads, for good reason, obviously conflicting with much more traffic and trams. So all the vehicle access has had to be by Moore Street. And I understand that obviously Moore Street is changing rapidly for the amount of development going on for those aforementioned reasons. But we've, again, provided, I guess, the minimum supportable amount of car parking for those dwellings. Whether we like it or not, Melbourne's very car-centric. It is what it is. So there are 2 car parks that would have been provided to that 3-bedroom dwelling that could have been reasonable. I guess the original existing dwelling would have had 2 car parks generally. This has now got 3. So I guess it's an incremental change, but it's accepted that it is an increase. So that advice of where the crossovers has gone has been in consultation with Moreland and their traffic department. As you saw, it evolved from a double crossover and single to 3 singles, and that was all based on Moreland traffic department advice. It wasn't subjective consultant from our end. So we take that on good faith that it's been chosen appropriately to have that configuration. I suppose lastly is what Jo said, one of the residents, that she'd like meaningful development. And I suppose to be optimistic, obviously Moore Street has a lot of passionate residents and is obviously a lovely neighbourhood, exampled by what's going on here tonight. here's the opportunity for 3 more families, young couples, to move into the area and share some of that that community. So this is where we are. So thank you.
Thank you. So, councillors, could I please have a motion for this agenda item?
I start with a question.
Sorry, we can go back to questions. You've got a question for the proponent?
For the officer, could he please clarify the parking situation? I understand that there's been some changes to the plans to make sure there's no parking loss, and that was one of the big issues raised here. Can you just articulate that again clearly so I've got that an understanding of how you've achieved that?
Sure. So the double crossing was removed and turned into the 3 single crossings because of the loss of on-street car parking. So that was on the advice of the officers and to the traffic engineer that this arrangement will not result in a loss of on-street car parking. So that's predicated on to the east of the site for a relocation of a parking site for that to occur. The question is whether to the east of the site, whether the 2 metres or approximately 2 metres of loss of curb will result in loss of on-street car parking. I believe that is the question. The question of whether this proposal will result in on-street car parking loss was given to our traffic engineer, and the response was that it would not result in a loss of on-street car parking. Obviously, there is a loss of approximately 2 metres of curb. Does that result in a loss of a space? It depends on the size of the car and the length of the curb that's available. This plan that's been submitted, in fairness, doesn't have the dimensions or the exact location of the crossover, but the survey plan was provided to our traffic engineer and made that comment.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions from councillors before I move on to the motion? No? Okay, so I'd like to...
Can I ask a question?
Okay, Sue.
Officer, I'm just wondering if the transport section of the council sort of looked at the issue of having extra crossovers so close to a really incredibly busy intersection, because I think that's one of my main concerns. I mean, yes, there's the parking, but it's such a dangerous intersection because so much is going on there.
That was clearly one of the key concerns of the objections, and that was specifically emphasised to the transport engineer to look at that issue in relation to the intersection. And also you've got the Nicholson apartment entry and exit opposite this site. So that was something that needed to be considered as part of this application. So specific focus was put on that issue, and the response back was that the 3 single crossovers was an acceptable arrangement in terms of the intersection and in relation to the Nicholson Street entry-exit.
Thank you. Does that answer your question, Sue? You've got another one?
I've got a resolution.
Okay, well, I'll call. Is there a motion from councillors?
No, I've got a resolution.
Councillor Bolton?
So, my resolution is a refusal to grant a planning permit on the grounds of, I'll just summarise, it should be coming up on the screen, the exact wording, on the 3 grounds: grounds of inadequate on-site car parking provision, the location of the new crossovers in the proximity to the intersection of Moore Street and Nicholson Street raises traffic safety concerns, and 3, non-compliance of dwelling 3 with the requirements of standard B22 overlooking objective and clause 55.04-6 overlooking objective of the Moreland planning scheme due to overlooking of the front garden of 101 Moore Street.
Okay, councillors, do we have a seconder for Councillor Bolton's refusal? Okay, for want of a seconder, that motion lapses. Councillors, do we have any other motions for this agenda item? Councillor Abood.
Yeah, this is not a popular angle, but I'd like to propose that we accept the officer's recommendations, and I'll talk to it if I have a seconder.
Okay, do we have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Kavanagh.
Right. I completely agree that the traffic is a humongous issue. I completely agree that the level of development is not something that any of us want to see. But I've been following quite closely what's getting knocked back and what's going through at VCAT. And I just want to read you something that was successful supporting the officer's refusal at VCAT. Planning control and policy expectations for new development, impact on adjacent residential properties, visual bulk, Merri Creek corridor character, insufficient landscaping opportunities. This list goes on. And if we don't, I'm very concerned that if we just knock this back outright, or if we sit here and 2 of us don't vote for it, or 5 of us don't vote for it, or if this doesn't go through with the conditions that we've put on it, what's going to happen is it's going to go to VCAT. VCAT are going to say, look at that great big 9-storey building that the minister himself has approved. Look at the zone, which is 3 stories, and that's not going to change. It's not going to be wound back. We know what we have seen recently in the last week or 2 weeks with the decisions that the minister's making about Moreland. I have no way to explain why these kind of changes are not being seen on beautiful big streets with what I think should be heritage listed properties that are in North Carlton. But in Moreland, we don't have the opportunity to control this kind of stuff unless we do it within our recommendations. And I'm very concerned that if we just say, no, we don't like it, what's going to happen is something a whole lot worse. And even though I know this is not going to make me a popular person, and I understand the implications of the decision because of the huge amount of community energy around multiple issues in this area, I don't think that this going to VCAT stands a snowflake's chance in hell of getting a refusal accepted. And with that in mind, I'm putting the recommendations because I can see that they've been tightened.
Thank you, Councillor Abood. Is there another councillor, Councillor Cavanagh, you'd like to?
Just briefly. Look, I just think when you look at it, it's in a neighbourhood zone, but it's got other zones around it. The Nicholson was not a council decision. The Nicholson was a ministerial call-in. When I go past it 9 stories, I still think that's far too big for that particular area. This is a 3-unit development, maximum height of 8.98 metres on dwelling 1. Only taking up 53% of the land as far as site coverage goes. I think it's a proposal that's worthy of approval.
Thank you, Councillor Cavanagh. Is there any other councillors that wish to speak to this? Councillor Riley.
I just want to pick up Mr. Councillor Cavanagh's point. It is actually general residential.
General residential. Did I say neighbourhood residential?
Yeah, which is one of the reasons why I'm reluctantly supporting this, because it is a difficult issue and it's very vexed, and I appreciate the contributions the community and the neighbours have made and all the comments that have come around. We are working on trying to get 40 kilometres across the whole of the city as one of our advocacies for this, and the fact that Vic Roads control Nicholson Street is obviously one of the issues we have. Just in terms of the comments around the measurements that we're taking and the assessments we're doing, I would like to posit the opposite, which is that it is not in anybody's interest to get poor data. Not at all. And I would challenge you about that, because if we're getting poor data and we're making crap decisions, you're going to get crap, we're going to get crap, and I'm not going to be doing my job because people will be so annoyed with me. Now, I appreciate that you don't share my view, but I do wish, and I will undertake to see that we've already raised this with officers around the trust factor, because, and I appreciate that some things may have happened in school holidays, etc. I'm not disputing those facts, but I just want to say that in terms of getting data, we need to have good data to be able to make the best decisions we can, and often we have to make compromises in those decisions. So it's not in anybody's interest to get data that's actually going to kind of drive some sort of agenda, because we're going to end up with poor decisions and poor outcomes for our community. So I'm as interested, Barbara and you, in getting good data to actually make these assessments. So I'd like to work more with you and the community to make sure we can trust that we're getting that data. So I'd sort of want to challenge that. It doesn't help anyone to get that kind of outcome through not having good information driving us. So having all of the debate you've contributed to, all the objectives you've contributed to, the wall solution that's come up today on the eastern boundary is to try and address the privacy issues, and I appreciate that your issues around light and so on, I can't address all those, but it was about trying to listen to those and come up with a solution so that we've not got the bulk of we'll have some more open space in terms of like a carport, car park rather than extra solid space that's absorbing heat, etc., etc. You can have more plants, particularly growing into that space. So I'm hoping that we've tried to address it. I know it hasn't completely addressed it from your perspective, but we're listening, and that's where that solution came up today. And I know the time is not brilliant, but we have tried to listen and tried to come up with a solution so that we have the 3 stories on Nicholson Street with the lower rise further into the block. So I'm very reluctantly supporting this. I'm sorry. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Riley. Sorry, we're not taking any more questions at the moment.
It was a question that wasn't addressed.
Yeah, sorry, we're not going to be taking any more questions. So move to Councillor Bolton, please.
I will be speaking against this. I think there are a range of issues, but I think my main issue is about the crossovers. And obviously, a corner block, you're going to have a crossover that's near the corner. But I just feel having 3 crossovers in that one block, so close to the corner, that's without addressing any of the issues of the overlooking and so forth that you're experiencing, even I think is a real line in the sand for me. But I can also appreciate very strongly the concerns when you've had this little garden paradise, which you didn't anticipate something like this happening. I could maybe accept this development more if it wasn't on the corner of such a busy street. Then I might be more sympathetic to the development. But my feeling is just because this is such a busy street with such a such a huge number of people who who are part of the sports club, the soccer club, and people using the mosque, people dropping into the IGA and the development and so much going on. I just think it's too dangerous to have this many crossovers so close to the corner. I just think it's going to be a total recipe for disaster. And I think, there's also the issues of parking because the nature of some of the uses of the area tend to lend themselves towards people parking quickly, and that means not necessarily parking with consideration to residents and popping in to get the milk or whatever. But I just think there's a real safety factor with the location of the crossovers and the amount of traffic in this street. It's not, I agree with the resident who said that this is not a normal suburban street. It's a particularly busy and dangerous intersection.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Councillor Farmer?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to thank the council officers for their work to try to alleviate some of the concerns by residents, and one of those being that there initially wasn't a car space for the 3rd unit that's been introduced to get that car off the street and into that unit's private space. The second one is that there initially was a double crossover and a single crossover, which meant only one car could park between there, and then there would be a loss of one on-street car parking on that street. Through the redesign that has now, it's still maintained 2 cars parking on that street. And I've parked on that street many times. As one of the objectors rightly pointed out, yes, I have been to that Coburg Mosque during Friday prayer time, and I have actually parked right in that spot before as well. There's many issues with traffic with this street, but I do recall previously discussing the fact that we didn't want to open it up to be a thoroughfare onto the adjoining main road, and I'm sorry, I just had a blank of it, Moreland Road. And we wanted to keep it as a private road for those residents. So there are some things that have caused that sort of build-up as well, I suppose, to put it in that context. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is there is a tram road right on that road. So 3 units, 3 families coming in that space with 1 car park. I really think that what we'll see is families coming in there that use that public transport right on their doorstep. I hope we do, and this is the right place to put this type of development, as opposed to further away from public transport where there would be multiple cars required for families to move around.
Thank you, Councillor Farnley. Is there any further debate from councillors? Okay, if there's no further debate, I'll put Councillor Aboud's motion to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried. I'll now pass back to officers for next steps.
Thank you. So the Urban Planning Committee has resolved to issue a notice of decision to grant a planning permit in relation to the resolution put up on the screen. All objective parties will receive a copy of that notice of decision to grant a planning permit and provided an opportunity to appeal at the VCAT. And similarly, the applicant will be receiving a copy of that notice of decision and has 60 days to appeal any conditions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I'd like to move on to the last item on the agenda tonight, and that is 2-1 McCall Court, Brunswick West, MPS 2016-785. And I'll pass over to Mr. Hughes.
Great, thank you, Councillor. So I'm presenting 2/1 McCall Court in Brunswick West. It's a proposal that seeks to extend a dwelling on a lot less than 300 square metres. The site is located in a neighbourhood red zone and it abuts a park. So it's part of a unit complex that I understand was built either in the 60s or 70s. It's hard to appreciate exactly where the site is, but it is a ground level apartment. So I've tried to describe it in this image here. And the objectives are either above or to the side of the development. Similar photo, and then you can see the entry to the dwelling on the right, which is down sort of like a corridor or access way to the side of the dwelling. The Planning Commission has sought to extend the dwelling via the construction of a study and bedroom at ground floor level. That will reduce the open space to 17.5 square metres, with there being a balcony terrace above. That's the view and elevation. After public notice, Council received 2 objections. Those objections related to loss of daylight, overshadowing, overlooking and loss of views. The assessment reveals that there's a number of aspects of this proposal that doesn't meet the planning scheme, in particular to open space provision, the location of windows on the boundary, and there is concerns that the balcony is outside the title boundaries. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to ask if there are any objectors here in the audience tonight. Are you an objector, sir? Yes. Please come forward.
My name is Antonio Colonna. From 54 the Crossway, East Kilo. My mom lives in the apartment above number three, and we are partly owner myself. Now, apparently there's 2 apartments there, one on the bottom, which is the proposed, and my mom is on top. Now he's proposed to have a building on the bottom land. Now he wants to go up high and make a balcony on top. Now my mom has got the windows right in the top apartment, and we'll be looking at that balcony. It's facing the kitchen window, looking over the park. Now I'm objecting to that. I don't mind him building a single story, but not a balcony on top. That's what my objection is. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Are there any other objectors here tonight in the gallery? No? In that case, is the proponent or a representative of the proponent here tonight?
Hello, my name's Andrew Terribly, the owner of 2/1 McCall Court in West Brunswick. I do admit it was an honest mistake for the draftsman and I to include a rooftop terrace that encroached into Unit 3 airspace. That was an honest mistake. We do now understand it's totally unacceptable and will delete it from the plans. There's no problem with that. In relation to the study of 7 square metres should be allowed as it only reduces the existing courtyard down to 17.5 square metres, which is still more than double the open space requirement of 8 square metres allowed by council. Even new apartments as large as 3 bedrooms are currently being approved and built in Moreland with a balcony of 8 square metres. Open space and site coverage. I think special consideration should be given with the open space being slightly reduced and the site coverage being slightly increased, as my property has a chain mesh, see-through, west boundary, fence frontage. The fence of 11 linear metres is at ground level, bordering a huge park, namely Fraser Reserve, which is 10,942 square metres or 2.5 acres in size. The park is also easily accessible through a gate 4 or 5 metres across my courtyard. I'm also happy to do any landscaping schedule that the council requires.
Thank you very much. I do have a question just from the onset. You're coming here tonight stating that you're willing to change the plans. There was quite a bit of opportunity to discuss this with planners. Is there a reason why you weren't able to work with the planners to come to this solution prior to getting here tonight?
I think there was some misunderstanding. I don't think I did get too much of an opportunity to amend the plans. I would have tried to do what I could to help the council to not get to this stage as such, yes.
Okay, thank you.
I think there might have been some misunderstanding, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you.
Otherwise, we should have it into respect.
Great, thank you. Councillor Cavan.
Can I just ask the officer a question regarding the 8 square metres? Am I correct that that's if it's reversed living?
Thank you, Councillor. You are correct. Open space provision is provided in a number of ways. So if you're at the ground level, it should be a minimum of 25 square metres. There's provision for a balcony, which would be at first floor, and then the rooftop terrace can be 10 square metres.
Okay, are there any other questions for the proponent? No? Okay, thank you. Sit down. Councillors, Councillor Kavanagh is on his feet.
I'd like to move an alternative recommendation to the one in the thing. I better read it so people are clear. That the Urban Planning Committee resolve that a notice of decision to grant a planning permit and PS 216-785 be issued for the construction of extension to existing dwelling for a lot under 300 square metres at 21 McColl Court, Brunswick East, subject to the following conditions, and they are very important conditions. 1, before the development commences, amended plans to the satisfaction of the responsible authority be submitted and approved by the responsible authority. When approved, the plans will be endorsed and will then form part of the permit. The plans must be drawn to scale with dimensions that are generally in accordance with plans advertised on the 21st of March 2017, but modified to show A, the study deleted from the ground floor, B, the first floor balcony deleted, and C, the new bedroom window located to the north elevation. Point 2, the development as shown on the endorsed plans must not be altered without the written consent of the responsible authority. This does not apply to the exemption specified in clauses 62.2.1 and 62.2.2 of the Moreland Planning Scheme, unless specifically noted in the permit condition. 3, this permit will expire if one of the following circumstances applies. A, the development is not commenced within 2 years from the date of issue of the permit, and B, the development is not completed within 4 years of the date of this permit. The responsible authority may extend the period referred to if the request is made in writing before the permit expires, or within 6 months of the permit expires to extend the commencement date, within 12 months after the permit expires to extend the completion date if the development has lawfully commenced. If I have a seconder, I'll speak to it.
Do we have a seconder for Councillor Kavanagh's motion? Councillor Carly-Hannon.
Yeah. Look, councillors, in essence, if this motion was supported, it would allow the applicant to build a small bedroom extension. It would not allow him to build the study, which he wishes to do, and he would not allow him to build the first floor, which the objector is also concerned, and it would also require him to move the bedroom window from the fence line around to the side. So it would give him a very small extra room, which he's been in contact with me previously, and it is very important to him. I think he'd be disappointed that he doesn't get the study, but I do accept the officer's point that the study would make him in breach of the open space provisions as well. So this would, it may mean that the applicant would decide it's not worth his while to do such an extension, and if that was his decision at that point, well, obviously we have to accept that, but it would mean that there wouldn't be any issues regarding the first floor balcony. That's completely deleted, and there wouldn't be issues about open space. My view is I think it's a fair compromise.
Thank you. Councillor Carly-Hannan.
Yeah, I'll just speak quickly for the open space provision. I do hear what you're saying about the idea that you're right on the park, but unfortunately that is public open space, and so it doesn't meet open space provisions for your own dwelling.
Thank you, Carly-Hannan. And Olivia. Is there any other councillors that wish to speak to this item? Okay, well,
I'll speak against and foreshadow the council officer's refusal, because I think I need to do that.
Yes, that's fine. Okay, so Councillor Farnley, if you'd like to
okay, just
talk to
very briefly. Look, it's fairly extraordinary to have a councillor reverse a council officer's refusal recommendation. Yeah. It is pretty unique.
It is, yeah.
But I don't think changing this to an approval, it then hasn't gone through the same vigour that planning application would have to go through in terms of shadowing, other impacts to amenity and a whole range of things. So a refusal has been put forward, it's gone through that vigour, it hasn't been accepted. I'm not sure removing a bedroom and the balcony, what impact that has to all the other elements that the council officers take into consideration, traffic, whatever it is that needs to be taken into consideration. So I would be more comfortable supporting the council officer's refusal for a permit and ask the applicant to go through this process again if he wants to extend his bedroom or whatever it may be, to go through that process and work with the council officers.
Thank you, Councillor Farnley. Are there any other councillors that would like to? Okay, well, I would like to just say a couple of things from the chair here. I also am supportive of the officer recommendations. I disagree. I think it's the practice of reversing this and setting all of this up now with this motion, I think isn't good practice. I don't like the idea of the boundary and the windows abutting the park. And to the current designs, the balcony stands outside of the tidal boundary. I have issues with the site coverage. And for me, I would like to see this go back through with officers to an appropriate level of development. So I will also be voting against Councillor Kavanagh's motion. Yes, Councillor Kavanagh, you can.
I did know the speakers. Look, I can understand the views of both Councillor Farley and Councillor Martin, but I do think that if you look at it carefully, councillors, all I'm trying to do is just to improve the amenity of this gentleman's property. We're protecting a large amount of the open space, considering it's such a small unit that he lives in. I think it's. I personally think it's reasonable. As I said, it may not even be acceptable to the applicant. I haven't spoken to him about the alternative recommendation, but I just think that if you look at on page, sorry, I've just lost the page that I had. If you look at that page, I remain convinced that it would be a reasonable outcome for everyone. Noticing that there were only two objectors, and both were concerning the balcony, which has been removed. But I can understand councillors if they have a different view, but I'm still comfortable in putting forward that motion.
Okay, thank you. So we're not engaging in debate at this time. Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. Okay, councillors, I'll put Councillor Kavanagh's motion to the vote. All those in favour? And those against? I declare that lost. So, Councillor Farnley?
I'd like to move the council officer's refusal motion, and if I have a seconder, I'm happy to go straight to the vote, but yeah, thank you.
Councillor Abood, second.
I don't have any further comments.
No further comments? Councillor Abood? Okay, are there any other councillors who would like to say anything to this? No? Okay, in that case, I'll put Councillor Farnley's officer recommendation to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? I declare that carried. I'll pass it back to Officer for comment.
Thank you. The committee is resolved to refuse the application That decision will be posted to the permit applicant and both objectors. In the event that an appeal is lodged, both objectors will be invited to be joined as party to any VCAT proceeding. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'd like to thank members of the gallery. For those watching at home, my fellow councillors, I now declare the meeting closed. Cheers.
Hey Moreland, today I'm down in St Kilda for the Midsummer Pride March supporting the LGBTQ community. It's a beautiful day. I'm proud to be here representing Moreland.